Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Tonight, news. A variety of different stories. No one story tonight seems to shout out that it should be the lead story. We have this shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. Maybe that's the lead. We probably should lead and will lead with that, I guess. But we have other stories tonight to cover too. We have reaction to that. I also want to touch briefly on Canadian politics and how change is not only inevitable, but likely. And how Canadian politics is so much different. It is considerably different than politics in the United States. When speaking to some of my American friends, they seem to think that things can't change. Even Canadians here seem to think things can't change. And yet they have, and they will again, in much more dramatic fashion than we've seen in the United States, at least through party change. I'll explain when we get to the story. I want to talk as well tonight about train derailments. Look at the stats. Are there more train derailments right now than there have been in the past? Or not? We'll look at the numbers. We may dip into the Zoom meeting that is taking place tonight with Soup Mama, who is taking more aid to the residents of East Palestine, Ohio, in the wake of the train derailment there that spilled all that vinyl chloride, which was then set on fire. So we'll take a look at that. And then there's this guy who was rollerblading on the highway in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. We'll show you a video of that, and I'll comment. And what else? Oh, yes, declaration of war. I think that either I misspoke or maybe Lori misspoke. There was some confusion about whether war was ever declared in World War II and World War I. I'm not sure how that subject came up. I'd have to review last night's video, but rather than do that, I'll just clarify for you tonight on that front. And that subject coming up because of Donald Trump's post. I'd say tweet, but he doesn't really tweet anymore. He's on Truth Social, and he posted yesterday, World War III, just World War III. Sort of a warning, I guess, about World War III. Talk about natural resources in Canada. The federal government trying to or looking at rescinding the 1930s natural resources transfer agreements that gave control over natural resources to the provinces of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba. That's a big deal. And if the federal government pushes on that, I think you'll find that the calls for Western separatism will be amplified even more than they are right now. So we'll take a look at that. I don't know if I'll run this or not, but there's also a video out of New York City of someone actually being shot in a sort of a store. I call it a sort of a store because I guess it's a store, but it looks like it's more of like a walk-in thing with vending machines. I don't know exactly what it is, but just a horrific statement on today's society, this video, just to watch it happen. It was just senseless, brutal, and I can't believe that people are living like this. So yeah, we might dip into that Zoom meeting. If you are inclined, you can go to soupmamaofficial.com or to the Soup Mama official Facebook page, and you can join the Zoom meeting directly there at 7 p.m. if you choose to do that, but we will probably be able to bring you some of the meeting live right here on the program in about 1 hour. We'll see if we can get a connection and join that meeting. So you can, I don't know if we'll stay in for all of it, but give you at least a sense of what is happening with that organization as they try to bring more aid to East Palestine, Ohio. And we have, so for the Louisville, Kentucky shooting, we have news conference, and we also have reaction from the White House. All that coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and time to go to Louisville, Kentucky, where we can run some of this news conference. So we get the information on what happened this morning with that shooting.
Louisville Metro Police. Again, at 8:30 this morning, approximately 8:30 this morning, Louisville Metro Safe received a report of shots fired and a possible active shooter at 333 East Main Street at the Old National Bank. Within 3 minutes of being dispatched, officers arrived on scene and encountered the suspect almost immediately, still firing gunshots. Officers exchanged gunshots with that suspect, and ultimately that suspect did die at the scene. We are trying to confirm if that suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or was killed by officers at this time. At least 2 officers were shot during this exchange of gunfire. One is currently in surgery at University of Louisville Hospital. At least 4 more victims were confirmed to be deceased inside the location, as well as 8 that are now currently being treated at the University Hospital. 2 are critical, one of those being the officer. We're currently working to identify all of the victims, work with their families for reunification, and provide services to the families and the victims. The investigation, I want to reiterate, is ongoing. This will be a long scene. It will take pretty much into the night. So I still ask that the public avoid the area. I want to reiterate that there is no active threat. We believe this is a lone gunman involved in this that did have a connection to the bank. We're trying to establish what that connection was to the business, but it appears he was a previous employee. It is clear from the officer's response that they absolutely saved people's lives. This is a tragic event, but it was the heroic response of officers that made sure that no more people were more seriously injured than what happened. We will continue to provide updates as soon as possible. We will have another press briefing following this at 3 p.m. today. I will turn it over to Mayor Craig Greenberg at this time.
So that was this morning. And I can tell you that it was a 23-year-old bank employee who was armed with a rifle who opened fire at his workplace, killing 4 people. This included a close friend of the governor, and this attack was live streamed. Authorities say this is the 15th mass killing in the United States this year. It comes just 2 weeks after a former student killed 3 children and 3 adults at a Christian elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. So this unfolded this morning. Police arrived as shots were still being fired inside Old National Bank. They killed the shooter in an exchange of gunfire. Police say that officers were fired upon, and when they returned fire, they stopped the threat. So that's basically it in a nutshell. We have also now reaction from the White House tonight on this, and other stories. We'll just pick that up with the press secretary there. I don't know what to make of I don't know what to make of the big Easter bunny.
There you go. So that's so nice.
All right, hop on out of here. Hop on out of here. So for the second year in a row, thank you, Easter Bunny.
Thank you.
For the second year in a row, we've turned the South Lawn of the White House into a school community where 30,000 people from across the country will participate in one of the White House most cherished traditions. This year's theme is Egg-ucation, and we're reminding families that education can be fun and that it never stops. So I hope that some of you had the opportunity to get out there and hop on it. Sorry, my team wrote that. Apologies. Hop on it with your families and enjoy the beautiful, beautiful day outside. With that, so we would like to thank our Easter Bunny here. On a more serious note, today we saw another senseless act of gun violence, killed at least 4 Americans and injured at least 8 others, this time in Louisville, Kentucky. The President and the First Lady are praying for those killed and injured in the tragic shooting in Louisville and for the survivors who will carry the trauma for the rest of their lives. They are grateful for the LMPD officers who quickly and courageously stepped into the line of fire to save others. Once again, today, the President has called on Republicans in Congress to work together with Democrats to take action, to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, to require safe storage of firearms, to require background checks for all gun sales, to eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. These are common sense actions we can ask for and should be getting right now. And it's what Americans want. We know that majority of the American people support this. Instead, we've watched Republican official after Republican official after Republican official double down on dangerous bills that make our schools, that makes our places of worship, that makes our communities less safe, while too many Americans are paying with their lives. So again, we need to act, and we need Republicans to show some courage, Republicans in Congress. Over the weekend, a single court in Texas has taken the dangerous steps of rejecting FDA's scientific approval of mifepristone, a medication that has been on the market for more than 20 years and is used safely in more than 60 countries, providing critical care for women. This court decision threatens access to this medication, which is used not only for abortion, but also for other critical purposes, like helping women manage miscarriages. If the decision stands, it will put women's health at risk and undermine the FDA's ability to ensure patients have access to safe and effective medications when they need them the most. This decision further stripes away Americans' fundamental freedoms and interferes with a woman's ability to make decisions about her own body. And it's another step towards the ultimate goal that we've heard over and over again from anti-choice officials that both the state and at both the state and national level, eliminating access to abortion for all women in every state. It is also an attack on FDA's authority to review and approve a wide range of safe and effective medication for Americans and could open the floodgates for other medications to be targeted and denied to people who need them. So we were prepared for this outcome. And as you all saw, the Department of Justice appealed the court's decision and is seeking a pending appeal. But I want to be clear because there is a lot of bad misinformation out there. Mifepristone continues to be available and approved for the time being. Again, Mifepristone continues to be approved and available for the time being. This administration stands by the FDA and is prepared for this legal fight. And we will continue our work to protect reproductive rights to ensure that women can make their own decisions about their own bodies without government interfering. With that, I have some more guests that are supposed to come through that door any moment now. Timing, okay. And so finally, today, he was actually in the suit. No, just kidding. Just kidding, Admiral. He was not in the suit, right? Okay, so finally today, as you can see, Admiral John Kirby, my colleague from NSC, is here to join us to give a preview of the president's trip abroad, where the president's going to leave tomorrow morning for the United Kingdom and also Northern Ireland, a trip that the president is definitely looking forward to. And with that, Admiral, the floor is yours.
So we're going to go back to that because I think Kirby is going to also address the leaked documents that we talked about that the Pentagon is looking at too, with regard to
Also know he's very excited for this trip and has been
the conflict
now
in
for quite
Ukraine.
some time.
But we'll start with
Tomorrow
this.
he will depart for Belfast, where he'll be greeted upon arrival at the airport by Prime Minister Sunak, who we also just saw last month in San Diego at the AUKUS announcement. On Wednesday, President Biden will meet with Prime Minister Sunak bilaterally. From there, President Biden will head to Ulster University to deliver remarks marking the tremendous progress since the signing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago. And he'll underscore the readiness of the United States to preserve those gains and support Northern Ireland's vast economic potential to the benefit of all communities. Today, I think you all know, is actually the 25th anniversary since the Belfast Good Friday Agreement was signed, ending decades of violence and bringing peace and stability to Northern Ireland. President Biden cares deeply about Northern Ireland and has a long history of supporting peace and prosperity there. As a U.S. Senator, Joe Biden was an advocate for how the United States could play a constructive role supporting peace. Now, following his speech at Ulster University, the president will travel to Ireland on Wednesday afternoon. He will visit County Louth, where his great-grandfather James Finnegan was born and the Finnegan family lived before they crossed the sea to begin a new life in America. And he'll tour Carlingford Castle. On Wednesday night, the president will spend the night in Dublin. On Thursday, he will meet with President Higgins of Ireland and participate in a tree planting ceremony and ringing of the peace bell. Following that ceremony, he will meet again with the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, whom the president just hosted here for St. Patrick's Day, as I think you all remember. In both meetings, the president will discuss our close cooperation on the full range of shared global challenges. He will then address a joint session of Irish Parliament about U.S.-Irish cooperation to advance democracy, peace, security, and prosperity, as well as the shared deep history between the United States and Ireland. Today, 1 in 10 Americans claim Irish ancestry, and Irish Americans are proudly represented in every facet of American life. Ireland's a key economic partner of the United States, and the United States and Ireland are working closely together to make the global economy more fair. Ireland has been a key partner for 21st century challenges as well, and the Irish government has been strong supporters of Ukraine, providing vital, non-lethal assistance, including medical supplies, body armor, and support for Ukraine's electric grid, as well as their agriculture. They have supported EU sanctions on Russia, and the people of Ireland have generously welcomed nearly 80,000 Ukrainians, offering refuge to those who were forced to flee their homes in search of safety. On Thursday night, President Biden will attend a banquet dinner at Dublin Castle. And on Friday, the president will travel to County Mayo, where he will tour the sanctuary of Our Lady of Knock and visit the North Mayo Heritage and Genealogical Center's Family History Research Unit. He will then deliver remarks at St. Murdoch's Cathedral, which his great-great-grandfather, Edward Blewett, sold 27,000 bricks to in 1827. Those bricks were used to construct and support the great cathedral and help Edward afford to buy tickets for himself and for his family to sail to America decades later in 1851. The president is very much looking forward to that trip again and to celebrating the deep historic ties that our two countries and our two people continue to share. With that, we'll take some questions.
Thanks, John. If you can start on the classified document leaks, has the president been briefed
Now we get to
on
the
this
news.
breach, and does the U.S. government at this point have any sense of who was behind it?
The president has been briefed. He was first briefed late last week when we all got word that there were some documents out there, and he has stayed briefed and in contact with national security officials throughout the weekend. So he has been briefed. And as for the source, as you know, the Department of Defense has referred this to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation. And I certainly would refer you to them, but I'm not aware that they've come to any conclusions at this point about where they're coming from.
And just to follow up on that, at this point, do you believe the leak is contained? Are there more documents out there that have not been released publicly? Is this an ongoing threat?
We don't know. We truly don't.
Moving to the tensions between China and Taiwan, we know the president can pick up the phone anytime and call President Xi. We've been told that this call is coming for months. Why hasn't he just picked up the phone and called President Xi to say, knock it off?
The president looks forward to having
Knock it off.
another conversation with
President Xi.
And we'll do that at the appropriate time. We'll certainly keep you apprised of that. It's important that those lines of communication stay open. The tensions are certainly high right now. We'd like to see this relationship get onto a better footing. And when it's appropriate for the two leaders to talk, then that'll happen. I want to stress, that said, that we are and have been able to maintain lines of communication between our two countries, even throughout all these tensions. And in fact, we're still working to get Secretary Blinken back on a plane over to Beijing, as he was planning to do a couple of months ago. And we're in talks with the PRC about potential visits of Secretary Yellen and Secretary Raimondo at their invitation, by the way, to talk about economic issues.
And while it's not popular, would the president ever speak directly to President Xi? I mean, would there be a conversation there, perhaps? What is his take on this meeting between House Speaker McCarthy and President Xi?
Not uncommon for presidents of Taiwan to transit the United States, as President Tsai did. It's also not uncommon for Taiwan officials, certainly at the president level, to meet with members of Congress, as President Tsai did. It's very typical. There's, again, no reason for any overreaction here.
No, you don't think so? What doesn't the President Biden just call him up and say, hey, come on, President Xi, cut it out, eh? Well, that's too Canadian.
Still on Taiwan, how does the U.S. see the latest Chinese military exercises there? And is the U.S. confident that Taiwan and help from the U.S. could continue to deter China from military, solution as they would see it? Because what they've been, that saber rattling, we call it, was a lot more than sabers. And it's more than rattling at this point.
Yeah, so we're monitoring the exercises as closely as I think you might imagine. They appear to be a reaction to something that didn't need to be reacted to in my previous answer. This is not uncommon.
Yeah, they're just like literally
presidents of Taiwan, and this one in particular, to transit the United
Canadian
States. So there was no reason to react in any way, militarily or otherwise. They also reacted rhetorically. But we're very comfortable and confident that we have in place in the region sufficient resources and capabilities to protect our national security interests in the Indo-Pacific. I would add more specifically to your second question, there's no reason for tensions across the Taiwan Strait to devolve into any kind of conflict. Nothing's changed about our one China policy. Nothing's changed about the fact that we don't support Taiwan independence. And nothing's changed about the fact that we don't want to see the status quo changed unilaterally, and certainly not by force.
Just a quick one, if I might, on Macron's visit to China. How did you react to his comments about wanting to create a third superpower and so on? Do you wish him luck? Is it just rhetoric, or is it kind of annoying to the U.S. administration?
I'll let the LEC speak to President Macron's comments. We are, again, comfortable and confident in the terrific bilateral relationship we have with France, and the relationship that the president has with President Macron, and the fact that we're working together on so many different issues. And the French are stepping up in the Indo-Pacific. I mean, they're conducting naval operations even as you and I are speaking right now in the Indo-Pacific, all in keeping with a concerted effort by all of us, this vast alliance or network of alliances and partnerships that we have to continue to make sure that we're standing up for stability, security, prosperity, and a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Thank you, Kareem, and thank you, Kirby. In light of the classified documents, I wonder if you could tell us when was the last time the protocol to grant security clearances was updated or revised in the government? And in light of the leaks, does the president believe you should take another look at that?
I think the Department of Defense has already started to take a look at distribution, for instance, at the Pentagon. I'll let them speak to that. I don't know the answer to your question on protocols for who is or who is not granted security clearances. There is already in place and remains in place a very diligent, deliberate effort to manage security clearances. And sometimes we get knocked because it takes a little too long for people's clearances to get approved because the process is so careful and deliberate. I think to your question, I think we just need to be careful right now speculating or guessing what might be behind or who might be behind what looks like a potential leak here of classified information. So we need to let the process sort of bear itself out.
Are you saying there's a question over whether this was a leak by someone who had access to the materials?
I'm saying we don't know, which is why I'm going to, I think you're getting to remedies, and I understand that. We're only a couple of days into this. We need to let the Department of Justice do their job, investigate this, see what they learn. Now, again, that said, the Department of Defense has already said that they're taking a look at distribution and looking if there's changes they need to make administratively there at the Pentagon, since it appears that they have the locus of most of the documents. But again, before we start making major muscle movements, we really need to know what we got here and have a better sense from the Justice Department.
Just a couple of quick follow-ups. Do you have a sense of the number of people who would have had access to these documents currently prepared for the joint staff?
I do not.
Is it hundreds, thousands?
I do not. I'd refer you to the Defense Department.
And then, given this leak and previous leaks, should the American people think that the administration is losing the battle against whoever wants to steal our secrets, whether it's foreign adversaries or hackers or whomever?
I think the American people need to know and deserve to know that we're taking this very, very seriously. The president has been briefed on this. He will stay briefed on this. The Department of Defense is looking into this. They are leading an interagency effort here to review whatever national security implications might come out of all this. And the Department of Justice is leading a criminal investigation. So we're taking this very, very seriously. There is no excuse for these kinds of documents to be in the public domain. They don't deserve to be in the public domain. They deserve to be protected. So we're going to get to the bottom of this. And then if there's actions that need to be taken as we learn more about the extent of what happened here, we'll obviously take those.
This crazy.
For President Biden to speak with President Zelensky over the leak, or is the White House offering any kind of reassurance to Ukrainian officials about the safety of some of their most sensitive information?
U.S. officials have been in touch with relevant allies and partners over the last couple of days at very high levels. I'll leave it at that.
Can you speak to not just the potential leak here, but what appears to be some doctoring of the information? Is this something where it's possible that there may have been a leak, but then a different actor came in, manipulated the information, and posted it online? What's the working theory in terms of the actual altering of this information?
I don't know that we've arrived at a working theory. It does appear that at least in some cases, the information posted online had been altered from what we think would be the original source. But there's just no way I can tell you with any granularity right now how that came to be. We're diving into this as strenuously as we can to try to understand that. And in keeping with your point, I mean, we urge all of you to be very careful about how you report on this story, since we know at least in some cases that information was doctored.
Thanks. Two questions, John. First on China. You said that was a reaction that didn't need to be made. Some would call that an overreaction. But how confident are you that there won't be further overreaction leading to actual conflict if this reaction was an overreaction?
Well, we certainly don't seek any conflict. And again, there's no reason, Brian, for there to be any conflict over this or confrontation, quite frankly, since really this is all very status quo and nothing's changed. That's certainly not about our policies, and it's not uncommon for a president of Taiwan to transit the United States. But to the exact question you asked, that's a question that needs to be asked in Beijing about what next. What we hope is next is that, again, tensions de-escalate and that we can continue to communicate with the Chinese, that we can continue to work on getting Secretary Blinken over there. The whole purpose of that trip was to restore some of those additional lines of communication that are still closed after Speaker Pelosi's visit. The mill-to-mill lines, the climate change lines, that was what Secretary Blinken was heading over there to do, and we'd like to see him get back on that plane and head over to do that.
And the second question, on the classified documents, has any of that leak led to a direct compromise of efforts to support Ukraine from this administration? And secondly, those who are in that business say that the biggest problem we have is that we need software and hardware upgrades to guarantee that we don't get hacked. Is there any indication that the government is going to invest in the infrastructure to make sure that you can block that in the future?
So on your first question, no, we continue to support Ukraine. That's not going to change. President's been, I'm not going to talk about the specific documents that are out there or speak to intelligence. I think you can understand why I wouldn't do that. Your question was, has there been any effect on support to Ukraine? The answer is no. We're going to continue to support Ukraine, as the president has said, for as long as it takes. On technological upgrades, again, I don't have anything to speak to today, and I don't know that even if we did, that we would talk about that in a public setting. But again, we're only a few days into this. We've got an investigation going on at Justice. We got DOD looking at their processes over there. I think we need to let those two agencies do their job, do that work.
Thanks. Just to follow up on the documents, is the White House concerned about the period of time that elapsed from when they were posted to when they sort of gained traction?
We're worried that these documents are out there, ma'am. They shouldn't be out there, period. That's the big worry. And in trying to figure out how that happened. And I'm sure as a part of that, the timeline will be looked at as well. But the main concern is that they're out there, period. They don't need to, they shouldn't be. Absolutely shouldn't be in the public domain.
Thanks, John, has the U.S. changed its timeline for getting the necessary weapons to the Ukraine military in any way?
I'm not going to, I wouldn't, even in the wake of, even before this story, I would not sit here and talk about specific timelines of equipment deliveries. You guys know that. I'll go back to what I said to Brian. We're going to continue to support Ukraine. That hasn't changed. It's not going to change.
And then a second question separately on NATO expansion. Now that Finland is officially a member of NATO, what's the timetable for Sweden being a part of the defense alliance?
We would like to see Sweden join the alliance as soon as possible, but that is going to be a discussion between Sweden and the alliance. And as you know, there's still some work being done in that regard. But we think they're ready now, and we're excited to have them as new members. As a new member.
John, hi, back here. Good afternoon. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is making a lot of headlines today, this story. Walter Reed up the road in Bethesda. A leading Catholic bishop says Walter Reed Medical Center is violating the religious freedom of service members who are at the facility. And they say that because Walter Reed just ended his contract with the Archdiocese for the military services for providing pastoral care. The Archdiocese calls the move, quote, incomprehensible. Are you familiar with the story, and can you expand on that?
No.
Why the contract?
I'm afraid I'm not, and even if I was, really, this is a better question for the Department of Defense.
Introducing the electric drill.
He's got his hands full there today.
That China refused to open their channel of communications with the Pentagon over the Taiwan issue the last several days.
I can't confirm that reporting, Steve. I don't know.
I don't know.
On the documents, have you been contacting any of the documents, the government's mentioned in the documents to talk about it, to try to smooth things over?
As I said, U.S. officials have over the last couple of days, certainly throughout the weekend, communicated with relevant nations, relevant allies and partners as appropriate at very high levels to communicate with them about this.
Bring this up when he speaks to the British Prime Minister later this week.
I won't get ahead of specific items on the agenda in that bilat, but we'll certainly be able to communicate with you after the fact.
Thanks, John. Is the president concerned about recent threats of violence in Belfast? And then more broadly, can you just walk us through the decision to visit Northern Ireland at a time in which their assembly isn't functioning?
So on the recent violence, certainly we've seen that over the last couple of days there have been some, and the president's grateful for the work that Northern Ireland security forces have done and continue to do to protect all communities and certainly the people in Northern Ireland. And he's, again, very much looking forward to going to Belfast. The timing of this is really timed around the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, an agreement that the president has a personal connection to, and obviously is very, very proud to see has really changed lives and livelihoods in Northern Ireland. And again, that's really what's driving us.
And I just have to try again on President Macron. Do you have a response to him saying that essentially Europe doesn't want to be seen as following the United States' lead on China?
Again, I'll let President Macron speak to his comments. We're very comfortable and confident in the strong alliance and the strong friendship that exists between our two countries, and the fact that we have been working together on the continent, and elsewhere around the world with France, whether it's, I mentioned the Indo-Pacific, certainly on Ukraine, in Africa, in the Sahel, going after terrorist threats there. I mean, there's a lot of terrific bilateral cooperation just alone between the United States and France. We're focused on that. We're focused on making sure that together we're meeting the national security requirements of both our peoples.
These leaked documents show that the U.S. has pretty in-depth contemporaneous information about Russia's military operations inside of Ukraine. Has there been any impact on U.S. intelligence gathering efforts in Russia as a result of this leak? And then in terms of the impact on allies who may be concerned that the U.S. simply can't keep this kind of classified information, which is shared among allies, safe, what's the reassurance to them?
Jeremy, I won't speak to intelligence collection one way or another on any given day about any other around any topic. So I'm just not going to go there. And as I said, U.S. officials have been in touch with relevant allies and partners, given some of these disclosures over the last few days, and we'll continue to have those conversations as appropriate.
And then quickly, it's been nearly 2 weeks now since Evan Gershkovich was arrested in Russia. Why has he not yet been officially deemed wrongfully detained by the State Department?
State Department has a process that can take a matter of days and sometimes weeks as they work through that. And I would refer you to the State Department to speak to that in any event. That said, you already heard Secretary Blinken say that in his mind he's wrongfully detained.
So why is it taking so long?
Again, I'd have to refer you to the State Department. They've got a process here that they run through, Jeremy, to make these determinations, and we need to let that process bear out. But setting aside for a second that he hasn't been declared wrongfully detained, at least not as of yet, doesn't mean that we haven't condemned his detention. We have. It doesn't mean that we haven't been in touch with his family. We have. It doesn't mean that we aren't also working as strenuously as we can with Russian officials to get him released. He doesn't belong there. He needs to be released. He's a journalist, not a criminal. And it doesn't mean that we aren't going to continue to follow this case as closely as we can. We still don't have consular access, and we're also trying to get that too.
Just a quick follow. I know you've said a couple times that the administration has been in touch with allies. Does that include specifically South Korea and Israel, given the described sensitive material as pertains to those two allies?
We've been in touch with allies and partners, relevant allies and partners. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, John. I understand that you're saying some of these documents might have been altered, but is it your assessment that at least some of them are authentic?
We know that some of them have been doctored. I won't speak to the validity of all the documents, the ones that that don't immediately appear to be doctored. We're still working through the validity of all the documents that we know are out there. The Department of Defense has stood up an interagency effort to try to look at the national security implications, which includes taking a look at these documents to determine whether they're actually valid or not. And I'm just not in a position to speak to that work, which is ongoing.
You're assuming some are valid at this point.
We're saying we cannot speak to the veracity and the validity of any of those documents at this point. We're studying that. DOD is leading an effort to study that to figure that out.
A couple more. Good. Thank you. Thanks, Kirby. I had a couple questions about the Ireland trip. I didn't hear you mention a meeting with King Charles in the president's schedule. Is that not happening?
The president had a terrific conversation with the king last week to talk about certainly his upcoming trip here, but also to let the king know that the first lady would be representing the administration at the coronation. It was a terrific conversation, and the king was very grateful for it, and the president was grateful for the time that the king afforded him. These are two leaders that have known each other a long time and have a very good relationship.
And then I want to follow up again about the warnings of violence in Northern Ireland, especially these reports there's threats of terrorist attacks. Is there concerns about the president going there now? And then also, I'm curious why he is making the trip when he's making it, instead of going to the official celebration, which is around April 17th, and it's going to see President Clinton and all those leaders there. Why is President Biden making a separate trip from that?
I think I already answered that one. I mean, this is really timed closer to the actual anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday agreement. And as for security concerns, we don't ever talk about security requirements of protecting the president, but the president is more than comfortable making this trip, and he's very excited to do it.
Good.
We're just finishing up the cherry blossom season in Washington, and it's 111 years since the Prince Tokugawa planted them, and it was much of it was to prevent a war. Is there a role that Japan can be playing, especially China's next door, in some of these different crises? And his grandson just took over. Is there some role that Japan can be playing in some of helping the U.S. with some of these crises, especially in terms of China?
I would argue that Japan already is and has been for quite some time. I mean, they just rewrote their national security strategy that gives them, allows them to be on a more assertive footing in the Indo-Pacific in terms of exporting security. And Japan has been a strong supporter of Ukraine. They have participated and we hope will continue to participate in both bilateral operations and exercises with the Republic of Korea, but also trilateral with the United States, South Korea, and Japan. So they've been really stepping up in a big way. We're grateful for that.
And then just to follow up, for those of us that were embedded during the wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot of this is really personal. Some of our friends, people we know, haven't been able to come back. Is there an update on what's going to happen to all those that trusted us and are left behind?
I'm not sure I understand what
Some of those that are still in Afghanistan that assisted us. And
Afghan allies there. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. As I mentioned last week, there are Afghan allies still arriving back here in the United States and able to leave the country on a fairly routine basis. That mission, that work is not stopped, and it's going to continue. Yeah.
More on the documents leak, specifically about the allies. Some of them have already said that they were eagerly awaiting a sort of assessment of what happened from the United States. Is that something that the U.S. will do down the line when you guys have more information as to brief those allies who were involved in those?
We will keep relevant allies and partners as informed as we can.
And just a quick follow-up on Taiwan. You said that this was a reaction that didn't need to happen. Is the U.S. sort of considering changing its posture in the Indo-Pacific, looking to what happened over the past 3 days over these military drills? Is that changing in any way the U.S.'s posture in the region?
No, As a matter of fact, today there are naval exercises in the Philippine Sea that the United States Navy is conducting. We're going to continue to fly and sail and operate in international waters and international airspace as required to protect our national security commitments. Again, I'd remind 5 of our 7 treaty alliances are in the Indo-Pacific region. We take those commitments very seriously.
Can you lay out what the consequences will be for the people or the person responsible for the leaks of these classified information? And secondly, have you been able to gauge what their motive is just based on how they've released this information?
The answer to both questions is no, I can't. There's a Justice Department investigation going on right now, a criminal investigation. I'm certainly not going to say anything that would prejudice that. And that work is just starting. So we don't know who's behind this. We don't know what the motive is. And I think, I can't remember who asked before, but we don't know what else might be out there. So we've got to let the Department of Defense run their process with the interagency and taking a look at the national security implications of it. And we got to let the Justice Department be able to pursue their investigation, again, completely unfettered, and let the facts and the evidence take them where they may, and we'll deal with it on the back end.
Message to them or anybody else who's considering leaking information.
This is, again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain. It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or on television. It is not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there. What we're going to try to do is do the best we can to figure out how this happened. And again, the Justice Department will take it from a criminal investigative procedure. And if the Defense Department has to change processes, they'll do that. But I think every American can understand, at least I would hope every American can understand, that in order to protect this country every day the way we do, one of the things that we have to protect is information. Not only the information itself, but the manner in which we glean that information. And so I think you can understand why everybody is taking this particular set of disclosures very, very seriously.
Yeah, the U.S. and the U.K. started negotiations on a trade deal nearly 3 years ago. What is the status of those talks, and do you expect that to be on the table at all this week when the president meets with the prime minister?
We're not in active discussions with the U.K. about a free trade agreement. That said, even out at San Diego, when the president had a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Sunak, they talked about trade issues, and they talked about trying to find ways to increase and to improve the economic exchanges between the United States and the UK, and that kind of discussion will continue. But there's no active discussions about an FTA.
Do you expect a news conference on this trip? I'm sure the press corps would be interested in that.
I don't expect there'll be a news conference on this trip.
Again, he really has his hands full there today. He's the one reacting to a lot of things, man.
And then one on Taiwan, if I may. I don't think that you would be
These
telling us
documents are
that this
problem
information has
for
no business being
the
publicly
administration.
shared, if you weren't prepared to confirm the authenticity of it. If they were completely spurious documents, I think you would say so, and you wouldn't be very concerned about it.
I didn't say they were spurious documents. I said we're still determining the validity of them. They certainly appear to be directly related to national security concerns and intelligence. That's pretty obvious.
Is there a gap between the number of documents that have turned up online and the number of documents that you know to have been compromised?
I'm not going to get into process, James. The Department of Defense has taken a look here at the national security implications of what has been out there to date. And they're doing the forensics. I'm not going to get into that process.
Before we hit Taiwan, because you tell us that you simply don't know what's coming next. Is the U.S. government effectively in the position of crouching and waiting for the next bombshell to hit on Telegram or Twitter? You're in a position where you simply don't know how long this is going to go on or how many documents are going to be published.
We don't know what's out there, James. We don't know who's responsible for this, and we don't know if they have more that they intend to post. So we're watching this and monitoring it as best we can. But the truth and the honest answer to your question is we don't know. And is that a matter of concern to us? You're darn right it is.
On Taiwan, in different respects, you have been candid in saying what you are able to discern about intentions of other countries. For example, you've told us that you discern no immediate plans by China to aid materially in the Russian war effort in Ukraine. You've told us that you discern no immediate plans by or movements by President Putin to install tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus.
Earning his paycheck
Along
today,
those
man.
lines, with respect to Taiwan right now, do you discern any movements by China that would indicate an imminent plan to launch military actions against Taiwan?
President Xi has said he wants his military ready by 2027. But saying you want to be ready by a certain time doesn't mean that you have an intent. President Xi would have to speak to that specific intent himself. We're not seeing any overt indications that kind of movement militarily is either imminent or inevitable.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. Kirby, talking about Afghanistan, when the U.S. was withdrawing, one of the closest ally of the U.S. was Pakistan. And the president did not call either the prime minister of Pakistan at that time, neither the weapons that many claim that around 6 billion weapons were left, neither they moved to Pakistan to be moved out. While Pakistan, one of the strongest allies, which sacrificed many lives, was not taken on board, and why their services were not required.
Taken on board for what? I'm not sure I follow you.
For removing the U.S. citizens, for removing the Afghans who were coming to the U.S.
Well, I mean, we set up a vast network of what we call lily pads to help get those evacuees to safety. And we were grateful for many countries' assistance. And without that assistance, we wouldn't have been able to do it. As for Pakistan, I think it's important to remember, they also suffered from the threats and still do from terrorist groups that occupy that spine between the two countries. And we continue to talk to Pakistan about those ongoing threats, about what they're facing. But there was, Pakistan was helpful in the withdrawal, and when we had to use, well, with their permission, they allowed us to move some helicopters over to Pakistan so that they could be out of harm's way.
One other question, please. Former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has been shot for bullets, and President Biden has had kind relations with international leaders for decades. He's one of the U.S. politicians who has been known for kindness among international leaders. He did not call the Prime Minister, and now the country is in a lot of turmoil as well. Is there any chance the President can bring at least all the parties, the military, the judiciary, the politicians on board so the country can be stopped from further deterioration of,
Now, look, we firmly believe and have for some time that a strong, stable, and secure Pakistan is good for the region.
Could you just clarify, is the First Lady going on the Ireland trip?
I don't have the actual traveling party here complete for you.
South Korea. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, man, he had to. He was really on the hot seat there. He really was on the hot seat. I have audio in my head from another source. So it's a little confusing. And it's the audio that I have is from this Soup Mama Zoom meeting. So I may be going to that. It depends on what they're talking about. I'll try to monitor that while I'm going to take this out of my head. I cannot listen to that and speak at the same time. I can't chew gum and walk at the same time. I'll tell you, they don't want that information out there Kirby really earning his paycheck tonight. I haven't seen him really grilled that hard in a while. And he really doesn't want the information on the front page of the papers or on websites. He doesn't want people talking about it. Nothing to see here, or at least don't look. A little late. It's out there. And the abortion pill, man, that is an issue that I don't think will ever be resolved. It's just something that goes on and on and on. And they say it's safe and effective, but man, how safe can something be if when you ingest it, it induces a miscarriage, causes you to abort a fetus? What else does that do to your body? I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I don't know. But it sounds downright scary to me to swallow something like that. What that would do to a woman, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to know. I suppose I should know if I'm even going to talk about it at all here, but I just find it all very concerning. Let's take a brief break. I shall return right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I'm back. Let me see if I can get this audio out of my head. Okay. Here we are. I need to mute this. I'm sorry. Just give me a moment here, folks. Too difficult for me to, I have to dump out of that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't do that. That is just too hard. I can't have one meeting in my head and talk to you and run the show. I'm sorry. Also tonight, I know that some of you are having trouble signing on to Rumble. I do not know what the issue is. It is running. It is live. I checked. Sometimes weird stuff happens with the Rumble feed and people can't seem to find it. Don't know why. It's just what happens. I do see some people are over there. Way fewer than normal. I don't know if there's monkey business going on with the channel or the feed. No idea. All I can say is I set it up. It is running, and that's the way it is. Also, if you were looking for last night's show on, the recorded version to replay it on YouTube, it came down because there was clips that I ran from the UFC event where Trump showed up, all of that stuff copyrighted by UFC. So automatically, as it was processing to remain up for people to watch again later, it was hit with a worldwide copyright strike. And it was still processing. And at that point, well, it wasn't actually, it was a worldwide block, but not a strike. So I just took the video down rather than wait for their copyright checks to continue, just in case they found something else to complain about. I don't think there was anything else in there that they would have used against us, but you never know. So I just took the video down. I then isolated the section on the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. presidential story. He's going to run for president, and Lori did a great job of compiling all that information last night. So that's isolated. I reposted that overnight. The numbers on that post were not what I expected they would be, but it's there for anyone who cares to go back and look at that. It went up on all the other platforms. It's still up, and it's up multiple times actually on a few platforms. So it is getting some mileage, and it's worth taking a look at it if you missed that portion of the show last night. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. challenging Joe Biden for the Democrat nomination to run for president. Wouldn't that be an interesting matchup? You know what else was interesting? This guy, RollerBlader, on the highway in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So the cops were following him. Like, again, what is this? This is like the OJ Bronco chase, only on rollerblades. Slow speed. And this was shot by Tiffany Davies and posted on Facebook. How weirdly Canadian is this? I don't get it. La da 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 da. Let's go for a skate down the highway. Got him. Isn't that bizarre? So the guy is just rollerblading down the highway. Then he crosses the median, goes back the other way. And they're having a little difficulty catching the guy. Pretty weird, eh? Eh? That's a Canadian thing, eh? So this was on the Lincoln M. Alexander Parkway, which I've driven on many, many times. It was around 10 a.m. yesterday. He's on rollerblades. Tiffany Davies, who shot that video, says, I think she said something like it's the one of the most bizarre things she's ever seen. The craziest thing she'd ever seen, she said. And Davies said that the rollerblader was flipping off the officers as they approached the Upper Wellington Street overpass on the expressway. And then you can see in the video, the guy takes off across the median, heads off in the other direction. And you know how we always sit here and say, they don't let us protest. They always shut us down, blah, 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 blah. You know what? They didn't charge this guy with anything. They let him go. I don't know why. I'm not even sure what the charge would be. What, J skating? I don't know. I don't know what the, I don't know. J skating. Pretty bizarre. Also, I just wanted to touch tonight too on train derailments. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to go over the stats. because I've had so many people talking to me about this, and I just it's worth a mention.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program. For your mind.
Okay, so train derailments. And I'm sorry, we're not going to go to that Zoom meeting with the Soup Mama thing. The reason being, too hard for me to follow the meeting. They weren't really into the meat of the subject while I was monitoring it. In addition to that, there may be people in the meeting who don't want to be broadcast all over the world. So in the to respect their privacy, I don't think it's a good idea for us to start blasting that all over the globe tonight. Not that I don't think that they're going to say anything or do anything that isn't out there for the public anyway, but because there are people in there who maybe were not aware that I dipped in. I don't think it's respectful, so we won't do that. However, you can participate if you want to go there. You can leave the show and go check it out, or we'll bring you up to date on whatever information comes out of that. And you know that they're going back there on the 16th of this month to East Palestine, Ohio, with another load of aid, of essential goods that people there need. So they are looking for donations, and you can help them out. And I'll put that up on the screen again. soupmamaofficial@gmail.com is how you can email Soup Mama. Or you can go to the website at soupmamaofficial.com. And they have been working with other organizations too in order to get people the help they need there in East Palestine, Ohio. So if you want to help out, you can do that. Now, train derailments. So I've had people give me so many different stories, and people are saying so many different things. And some of the stats that are being thrown at me are pretty crazy. And I'm interested, before we get started here, how many train derailments do you think that there are in a month? And do you think there are really a lot more train derailments going on right now than there have been in the past? I'm kind of curious. So when the East Palestine, Ohio incident took place, there was a lot of media attention on that, especially for about a 2-week period. Very intense over the first week. So Jason says yes. I don't know. So I'm not getting much reaction in the chat to the question. Well, I'll tell you, I've had people say, and I heard this again today, not just from one person. This is somebody repeating what I'd heard, who told me that they heard from a good authority that this year we've had 30 times, or wait a second, how did he put it? I think, yeah, somebody told me 30 times more train derailments this year than normal. And somebody else told me that we've had more train derailments in Canada and the US this year than in the past 30 years combined. Either way, the numbers would actually jive and be about the same, because I looked up some stats. If that's true, that either way, the quantity would be about the same, the number of derailments. And I'm wondering if how accurate you guys think that is based on what you've been told and what you know. And are you hearing the same thing out there? Because I did look up some stats, and you guys can draw your own conclusions from this. And a variety of sources, and the numbers do vary a bit. And I think that's because from year to year to year, they do shift a little bit. But basically, you're getting in the United States somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400 train derailments every single year. So give or take about 100 a month. That's a lot, but that's what's been going on for decades. That's how many. And most of those do not involve serious injuries, deaths, or even extensive damage. Quite often, there are derailments and you don't hear about them because the trains are just carrying, different kinds of goods that are not toxic, not necessarily chemicals. So the train jumps the tracks, they come in, they clean it up, they get everything back in order, and away they go again. But that is the number. In Canada, I looked up the numbers, and on average, there are about 90 to 100 per year. Why the huge difference? Why why 90 to a 100 in an entire year in Canada versus like 1,000 to 1,400? Well, that's pretty simple. The US population is over 10 times the size of Canada's. You get that much more activity, that much more rail traffic, and that just about equates on a per capita basis, right? That's about 10 times more derailments because there's probably 10 times more rail traffic, and there's probably just as much maintenance neglect on both sides of the border. And a lot of those trains do travel back and forth across the border. So not surprising to me at all that the percentage would correlate that way and that it would be fairly consistent. It tells me that those numbers being reported are probably fairly accurate because you're getting numbers from the Canadian side and the US side, percentage-wise on a per capita basis. It all jives, right? At least it seems to. And then I thought about that 30 times more or as many in the past year as we've had in the past 30 years combined. Either way, that number would jump to well over 30,000 train derailments in the United States alone in just 1 year. This year, 30,000. 30,000. Do you think that would be accurate? That would be 2,500 train derailments per month. 2,500. Somewhere between 85 and maybe just over 100 a day. Is that even possible? Are we getting that many train derailments? 85 to 100 a day? Train derailments? What do you think? No, I don't think that's true. And I've seen no evidence of that. All the evidence, all the stats that are coming in are that this year we've had just about exactly the same number of derailments as we've always had. There isn't any more or any less. I would say that we just have too many, that it's been going on too long, that maintenance is not being given the consideration that it needs. But a lot of these reports that we're getting, man, check your information, folks. People are saying things, sharing information that I think it's demonstrably not just not true, it's demonstrably impossible. There's no way trains are derailing at that rate. It's just not true. And it just shows again how media, and I don't even think it's the mainstream media. This is like the grapevine. This is social media. This is people looking for, it's clickbait. And it's, and media, independent media outlets that repeat this kind of information, I think that they're irresponsible and they are doing people a disservice. We need to deal in facts and truth with that information that is out there like that exaggeration. People believe it. But it isn't true. There's no way that's true. We're not getting 2,500 train derailments a month. We're not getting 100 a day. It's just not happening. Not to that level. I just thought I'd share it with you. I've always told you I will never lie to you knowingly. In fact, I won't. I might make mistakes. People might share information here that is not factual, that maybe I don't catch. I might make errors, but I'll never intentionally lie to you. And I will always try to bring you the truth. That's the truth. About the same number of derailments this year as always. The situation in East Palestine, Ohio is terrible. The contamination there, very dangerous. It's a serious issue for the people living there. A serious health issue, a serious issue for their community. Their future, uncertain. They do need help. They need the government, I think, to pay attention to it. They need Norfolk Southern to step up and do the right thing and provide compensation, assistance. They need this. They need this cleaned up properly, if that's even possible. At this point, after setting it on fire. And they need to monitor the situation there in the long term, because while their groundwater in many cases may not be contaminated right now, and there has been testing in the community to show that a lot of the people, for the most part, the people's drinking water there is not showing evidence of contamination. The groundwater, the people there on wells, it takes a long time for pollution like that, chemicals to seep into the ground and find its way into the groundwater, into the wells. So they'll need to monitor that for years and years and probably decades, because it might be safe today, but 5 years from now, it might not be. That's the information that I have been able to extract from various sources, including some professors and media reports and officials who I don't entirely trust. But as much as they're trying to pretend or make it seem as though everything is getting back to normal there, it is not. It needs to be monitored, and they need to continue to test, and they need to be vigilant. But we also need to be dealing in facts. And that starts with statistics, like numbers of train derailments. Don't let people scare the pants off you with gross exaggerations like the one I just shared with you. Stay grounded, man. Keep your head out of the rabbit hole. Deal with facts. Deal with reality. That's how you stay safe. That's how you help people. Because then you get to the right place, to the right answers, to the right solutions. If we don't deal with reality, we get to the wrong places, the wrong solutions. We end up doing crazy things. And it scares the pants off people. If we had 100 train derailments a day around the country, it would scare the pants off me. To hear that, I was like, wow. Because I'd looked the stats up before. And when I kept hearing people say 30 times more, that's like well over 30,000 a year. No. Sorry. I know. I'm the crazy one, right? Because I don't believe it.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back. Let me just see what else we have to chat here. Well, yesterday there was, I think maybe just somebody misspoke. I don't know if it was me. Might have been me. I don't know. But a couple of people said that in yesterday's program, it was said that it was stated there was no declaration of war in either World Wars I or II. And that is actually not the case. So if I said something that misled someone, or if I misspoke, I do apologize. There was absolutely a declaration of war during the First and Second World Wars. And I thought, well, given that we are basically in World War III and we are at war with China, it's just a different kind of war. It's not a kinetic war at this point with fighter jets and bombs. It's an economic war. It's an information war. It's fifth generation warfare. And I think we're also engaged in that kind of war worldwide. But I thought it would be worthwhile just to take a look back. Here's a declaration of war. As Britain declares war on Germany. This was September 3rd, 1939.
This is London. You will now hear a statement by the Prime Minister.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany. You can imagine what a bitter blow it is to me that all my long struggle to win peace has failed. Yet I cannot believe that there is anything more or anything different that I could have done and that would have been more successful. Up to the very last, it would have been quite possible to have arranged a peaceful and honorable settlement between Germany and Poland. But Hitler would not have it. He had evidently made up his mind to attack Poland whatever happened. And although he now says he put forward reasonable proposals which were rejected by the Poles, that is not a true statement. The proposals were never shown to the Poles, nor to us. And though they were announced in the German broadcast on Thursday night, Hitler did not wait to hear comments on them, but ordered his troops to cross the Polish frontier the next morning. His action shows convincingly that there is no chance of expecting that this man will ever give up his practice of using force to gain his will. He can only be stopped by force. And we and France are today, in fulfillment of our obligations, going to the aid of Poland, who is so bravely resisting this wicked and unprovoked attack upon her people. We have a clear conscience. We have done all that any country could do to establish peace. But a situation in which no word given by Germany's ruler could be trusted, and no people or country could feel itself safe, had become intolerable. And now that we have resolved to finish it, I know that you will all play your part with calmness and courage. At such a moment as this, the assurances of support which we have received from the Empire are a source of profound encouragement to us. When I have finished speaking, certain detailed announcements will be made on behalf of the government. Give these your close attention. The government have made plans under which it will be possible to carry on the work of the nation in the days of stress and strain that may be ahead. But these plans need your help. You may be taking your part in the fighting services or as a volunteer in one of the branches of civil defense. If so, you will report for duty in accordance with the instructions you receive. You may be engaged in work essential to the prosecution of war or the maintenance of the life of the people, in factories, in transport, in public utility concerns, or in the supply of other necessaries of life. If so, it is of vital importance that you should carry on with your jobs. Now, may God bless you all, and may He defend the right. For it is evil things that we shall be fighting against: brute force, bad faith, injustice, oppression, and persecution. And against them I am certain that the right will prevail.
That is the end of the Prime Minister's statement.
Lest we forget.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. I wanted to talk about Canadian politics for a moment. Federal. Because I've been speaking to a few of my American friends who don't seem to fully grasp the volatility of the Canadian political scene and how quickly things not only can change, but have changed in the past. When I've had discussions with a few people over the past month or so about how I see the rise of populism, nationalism, and even this common law movement, which underpins a lot of this, my assessment is largely being dismissed by people who think that there's no real momentum behind it, that it maybe isn't even really much of a story, that it isn't something that needs to be examined much. I disagree. The reason I disagree is because I've covered politics in Canada for so long, and I know a little bit about Canadian history, and I've seen that at different periods in time, Canada has almost flown apart. It has almost self-destructed. You know, you have the Quebec separatist movement, you have the Western separatist movement, you have First Nations that right now, because of UNDRIP, are even to some degree in conflict with each other. And we've seen in Canada that alternative political parties can actually get traction. Not so much in the US. That's why people, I think, have a little bit of trouble wrapping their heads around what I'm about to talk about. Canadians are seen as being polite. Canada is seen as being a very stable country. That might be the perception. The reality is anything but. Canada is very, very volatile politically. I don't think there's ever been a time in my lifetime when it has been more volatile. You've seen the rise in the last few years of the People's Party of Canada, for instance. Now polling at just under 4%. Down a little bit. The party had a little bit more traction. That's the Populist Party in the country. That is the party that some people would say is far right. I'm not sure if that's accurate. It might be. My assessment of the party itself is changing, has changed in the past few months. The makeup of what the party is, the demographics of it have changed since its creation. Originally a home for homeless conservatives who found that the Conservative Party of Canada had left them. That's how the PPC was originally formed. But over time, it has attracted people from across the political spectrum. Today, I'm not quite sure what the exact demographic makeup is anymore of the PPC. But it is strongly tied, certainly embedded within, or maybe it's the other way around, but I would say embedded within the freedom movement. That is where the base of support is for the People's Party of Canada. It's significant because that movement the freedom movement. I think in some ways it's self-destructing, while at the same time, the populism, the populist movement, and even the common law movement, they've become strangely organized, and they're gaining more traction within the country. It's something to keep an eye on if you are interested in politics. It isn't just the PPC. There are other parties in the country at the provincial level that are also populist in focus, including the Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan, the Independence Party in Alberta. Both of those parties are very focused on the exact things I've spoken about. They're focused on reforming the Constitution, even drafting a new one in some cases. Very focused on common law language. It's being driven, these parties are being driven now, in my estimation, largely by common law advocates. The freedom movement is underpinned now by the common law movement. So what, right? Well, I just bring it up because it should not be dismissed as a political force in the country. It has traction, it has organization, and as it polls at just under 4%, it represents a real political force within Canada. I was going to show you a video first, but I'm going to show you the polling before I get to the video. Here we go. Oops, wrong thing. What happened? Did I just lose you guys? No, I didn't. Okay. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want... Sorry, I'll come back here. I want that, and then I've got to come back here. I want to show you the 338 poll. And this is something that I think we need to take note of. And if you're American, or if you're watching from another or listening from another country around the world tonight, take note of this. This is something happening in Canada, but I think it's a reflection also of what is happening on a more global scale, because this populist movement, if you want to call it that, or common law movement, they're becoming more organized even on a global scale, connecting different organizations, getting organized and getting into some sort of synchronicity. So, and again, I'm getting messages about people wanting the Rumble link. Guys, there's nothing I can do about it tonight. It is up and running. I put the link in the chat, and that's all I can do. I'm in the middle of the show, and I can't, shut it all down and restart it all again. I'm very sorry. It is up and running. If you follow the link that I provided in the chat earlier, it will take you to the live feed on Rumble. I know that there's something strange going on with it where people are having trouble finding it, but it is public. I checked that as well. This is the second time in the past week that feed has not gone out properly, and I do not know why. Back to the poll. If you're watching on YouTube or whatever, just watch on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. We're on Twitter tonight too. So right now, the Conservative Party of Canada polling at 34% plus, and this is all plus or minus within 4%. Liberal Party of Canada projected to get 31% of the popular vote. NDP at 19%. They're very left-wing socialist. Bloc Québécois, they represent, of course, Quebec, and embedded within that is a lot of that Quebec separatist sentiment. The Green Party at 4%, and the People's Party of Canada at 3%. plus or minus 2. So they could be as high as 5. They might even have more support than the Green Party. In spite of the fact that the Conservatives seem to have about 34%, plus or minus 4%, so they could have as much as 38%. The Liberals would still garner 141 seats in the House of Commons if the election were held today and if this poll is actually accurate. And the Conservatives, it looks like they would get somewhere around 138. And they're not projecting any seats for the PPC. Don't be so sure. Why do I say that? Because I've seen what can happen in Canadian politics before. I've seen it happen in the past. All you have to do is go back to the early 1990s. The political landscape was turned upside down almost. Those were the Reform Party days, which emerged from the West, from Western separatist sentiment, because people living in the West felt they weren't properly represented in government. Those were the days of Preston Manning and the Reform Party. I was a big fan of Reform back in those days. Big fan of Preston Manning. And then from the Reform Party, we got the Canadian Alliance, which was the merging of Conservatives and Reform, the old Conservatives, that put it all back together. And then later we got the Conservative Party of Canada. Well, former Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, sat down with Preston Manning just a number of days ago for a public discussion at a forum. And there he said that what Canada needs, he's calling for a new conservative renaissance. I have the clip lined up here. And I want to run this for you because it really does sort of drive this home, this whole idea. He's going to take you back to 1993 and make my point for me.
Would dig up some of the things we said about the Senate. Yeah. Like,
Probably
it sleeps 108.
Yeah. Anyway, so federal election night, 1993. For those who remember, and really unprecedented, I think since Confederation, nothing, maybe not even 1921 comes close. Governing parties virtually wiped out. 2 of the 3 traditional parties are no longer have official party status. A third of the seats in the parliament, 54 for the Bloc, 52 for Reform. As Deborah Gray used to say, we got a full deck, they got the jokers. A third of the seats go to brand new or virtually brand new political parties, which had barely existed a few years before. Canada's a political revolution. On the other hand, you know, you and I, we ran in 1988. There was no political revolution. 1993, there is. So tell us about the thoughts on that night and what happened.
Well, like you and I have talked about, I think this is close as Canada will come to a revolution. I mean, we're not a revolutionary people. Our revolution wasn't like the French Revolution. We're too polite to chop off heads. Our revolution was not like the American Revolution. Environment Canada wouldn't give us a permit to put tea in the Toronto Harbor. But the changes that you mentioned are pretty fundamental. The governing party that went from 150-some seats to 2, and a third of the seats in that parliament going to parties that virtually hadn't existed 5 years before. So I think that's the closest thing to a revolution. One little thing, because I was in at some of the other sessions today, and one of the speakers made a point about somehow how one vote can somehow change. We lost 3 seats in Edmonton by a total of 329 votes. that made the difference between whether the official opposition in the Canadian Parliament was a Federalist Party or a Separatist Party. If Quebec had gone the wrong way on that night and we were here in that referendum, I was going to go back to Edmonton and say there are 400 people here who are, if you had voted the other way, it would, that the Bloc used that position of official opposition in the Parliament to build its case for separation. So
very effectively.
The absolute importance of voting, you never know how much, and in that election, that was very important.
Yeah, really was.
Yeah,
really was.
Well, now, like I say, we got down here as members of Parliament in 1993, but of course our first member was Deborah Gray, elected in 1988 in the Beaver River riding. And you came down, I think we assigned you to come down with Deborah as her executive assistant, her policy advisor.
Well, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of Deborah Gray, who I do remember, but that just shows you how the Canadian political scene was so different even just in the 1990s. And that was because the Conservative Party seems to have a habit of breaking apart and then coming back together again. Back in the 90s, man, everything was literally reformed. But not reformed in the way that the Reform Party wanted it reformed. But man, they had traction. Well, today the PPC, in many respects, it's a new version of the Reform Party. Not exactly, but there is some of the same dynamics are in play there in the way that the party was created and what it is today, right? But the political conditions are different. The social conditions are different. The economy is different. We've just gone through the pandemic and the lockdowns, and the level of frustration and anger out there is unprecedented in the country. The US dollar is on the verge of being dethroned as the world reserve currency if it isn't already. With that happening, the economy is in peril. Our way of life, our standard of living is on the brink of being decimated. That's what's potentially coming if our politicians, if our leaders don't find some solution. And unfortunately, they seem to think that the solution to all of these problems is to go to war and print more money. That seems to be the solution they always come up with. But I don't think either of those tools are viable for them anymore. I don't think the war in Ukraine will lead to a positive outcome. I don't think they can print money, print their way out of this economic problem this time, because the BRICS nations are de-dollaring countries around the world because of the weaponization of the US dollar. They're skating away from it. And for the first time, the BRICS nations now make up collectively the largest economic bloc on the globe. They have more economic power than the West, than the United States. It makes for a very volatile situation because Canada is joined at the hip to the United States. There's an old saying, if the United States catches a cold, Canada gets the flu. It's true. So if things really fall apart, and there's a lot of pain, I think you will see a huge shift. Historically, we've seen this in other countries. When the economy falls apart, people run to something new. Sometimes something radical, sometimes something extreme. In this case, I think the PPC is waiting there with arms open, waiting for people to run into those wide open arms as people respond to these changing economic and social conditions. If there's more pain, I think you'll see a huge rise. Within the populist movement, people will flock to it. I think it's coming. Maybe not in this next election. It probably will happen too soon. That may be why Justin Trudeau was talking about going to the polls this spring or maybe this summer. I don't think it's going to happen now. Too much time has passed. And I think he is now facing too many political challenges, too many problems with all of this controversy surrounding foreign interference in the Canadian political process and our elections, and in particular, China meddling as it's being described. But do not dismiss these alternative parties. Do not dismiss the PPC. Do not dismiss that whole political movement over there. It's just percolating. It's waiting. It's aging. Will it age well? I think if the country doesn't deal with these serious economic and social issues, if the government can't address effectively the loss of trust in public institutions, in our government, in our healthcare system, in our legal system, and all of these things, if they can't effectively address that, people will migrate to these alternatives. Maybe the Green Party too. People may end up over there. You might see a PPC Green face-off, in an election. If people lose faith in the existing parties. And make no mistake, these political powerhouses, including the Liberal Party of Canada, they can be completely destroyed. You've seen it at the provincial level, if you pay attention, where a party can go from being in power in Canada provincially, even the Liberal Party, and then within one election be completely destroyed to where maybe they only have a handful of seats, maybe 3 or 5. Canada is not the United States. It is not just a two-party system. And people who think that change can't happen, you are so wrong. It can happen in the blink of an eye. It happens very, very, very slowly, and then right away. Brace yourselves for the future. Prepare. I'll tell you this, inflation, it's here to stay for a while. Prepare for that. Protect yourself. I'm not telling you specifically what to do, but educate yourself on the way the economy works. Know that the value of your money is going to diminish over time, and more and more quickly as inflation takes a firmer hold on both Canada and the US, Western countries in general. We're facing serious issues. I don't think our politicians are taking it nearly seriously enough. And in the long run, I think it's going to cost them. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back. That gets us to 8 o'clock. So let's, I guess, open up the phone lines for at least a little bit here tonight. I'll get that cranked up. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, the phones are set up. Here's the number to
join the conversation. Call 1-833-975-3733. That's 1-833-975. Free. Speak up. Speak out. Make your voice heard. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom by defending your right to free speech. Be a Maverick. Join us.
Okay, I'm back, and we have our first caller of the night. Go ahead.
Hey, Rick, it's Steve.
Hi there.
Oh, don't sound so excited to hear from me.
I know where it's going, so you go ahead.
Oh, well, did you not want me to go there?
I brought it up, so I guess I'm a sucker for punishment. But don't
you are a sucker for.
But don't be surprised when I jump down your throat. But you go.
That's fine, actually. Because
go ahead.
Let's might. Okay, well, this may be a little surprise because I'm not prepared tonight to jump down your throat, or.
Okay. And I mean that in a friendly way. Okay, I mean it in a friendly way, not in a bad way.
Well, me too. And as I said before, sometimes I feel the need to push back a little. Just, this is actually more about, I think that this is not so much for me. This is not really something I need to prove or a goal that I have. I think that you are overlooking something. I think that you're missing something.
What am I missing specifically?
Okay. See, I don't know exactly what it is you're missing.
Well, then, then don't, then what are we talking about then? Because that's part of the problem that I have when you call in and you discuss this with me, you are kind of all over the map. And then you say things like that, and I can't even respond to it because it's not even coherent. I think you're missing something, but I don't know what it is you're missing. How am I supposed to respond to that?
Okay, for one, what I was going to say is I found a couple of resources that I was going to point you in the direction of, and that was kind of going to be what I was calling about. Because like I said, I didn't think you were going to talk about this tonight. I wasn't fully prepared. But for one, the law is, current law is Common law. I mean, we have legislative law and we have common.
Our current law is based on common law. In English Canada, it is based on civil law in Quebec. And it is not a straight up common law system. It's predicated on it, but it is not just a straight up common law system. It's a refined common law system. And thank God for that.
Okay.
And and I can explain why too, but you go ahead.
Why do you say that?
Because if all we
maybe
have,
you know,
because look, you common law advocates keep saying things like it's a de facto government, it's not a de jure government. Do you even know what that means?
I've never said that, Rick. This is
this forms the basis of everything. I've studied it.
I don't think our government's illegitimate.
Okay, great. So, okay, well, we can push that aside. But here's the problem with the common law thing. Common law doesn't deal with the subtleties of law. For instance, common law is basically based on the Bible. It's based on the law that says you have these inalienable rights. And it kind of leaves it there. What Canadian law, what US law does, what these different legal systems do is in Canada, the common law foundation of the Canadian legal system in English Canada, it's codified. So it refines that. It takes those legal concepts, and those are described in the Constitution, but it also addresses the need to realistically limit people's rights where it's in the best public interest to do so as well. Because, for instance, I don't have the right to just murder someone. I don't have the right to just do whatever I want at any time that I want. There are certain limits that we as a community have to impose on our communities in order to keep everyone safe and to actually keep everyone free. That's why freedom is such a complicated concept. It's like you can't just be completely free. You can't have a society that is based in anarchy, and you can't have a society that is simply based on common law itself, which is only like the 10 Commandments, because it's not specific enough. If you murder someone, common law itself doesn't really deal with the subtleties of a case or the intricacies of a case. It doesn't address whether it's manslaughter, first degree, second degree, if someone's running away with a weapon in their hand after they've assaulted you and then you shoot them in the back. What kind of killing is that? Is that first degree, second degree, manslaughter? You know, even if you looked at the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, if that was a case, you have to look at whether there's intent, or whether it was just negligence or ignorance, or if someone was ordered to do it, or if they did it on their own. There are all these different things. Well, codified law addresses those things because it writes it all down and it puts it in big legal texts, right? So that people know exactly what the law is and how it applies to them every single day, which is why the ignorance of the law is no defense, because it's all written down and it's codified and it's all there and it's very refined. But if all you do is base everything simply on a common law concept, that's all very loose. It's like thou shalt not kill, okay? But it doesn't deal with the subtleties of these things.
And that's what precedent is for. And what you're crossing legislation with law. Like what you were talking about with East Palestine, that would be in a legislative realm versus a legal realm.
Right.
So those are two different types.
It's still the legal system. It's still law. It's just different arms of the law.
It is the legal system, but there's the law that pertains to people, and there's law that pertains to business. And I know what you're going to say now, but that's just fact.
Okay.
And
I'll tell
do you not believe in constitutional law?
Common law is a thing, but it's not sufficient to form a legal system.
It is, though.
It isn't.
It is, though. As you say all the time, we have precedent, and the precedents have been set for years and years and years. What's happening is
Not to that level.
they're
That's why
trying
that's
to
why it's codified. That's why you have the Criminal Code of Canada.
right. All I'm saying is that you need to figure out what legislation is versus what law is.
I know
right?
exactly.
So they have.
I know what it is, and it's
Okay,
codified
well,
law. You have a criminal code. It's not just based on the Bible.
yeah, but in
it's
there
not
it
just
also
based on Black's legal dictionary. We have a criminal code. And that's one of the complaints that the common law advocates have, is that there's too many laws. It's too complicated. It's funky language.
Okay, well then we're not
they're
all
tricking us. No, it's laid out, and it's very specific, and it is done in legal language so that it is very specific, and that is to protect the public, actually, so that it's very, very defined.
I meant the common law people are not all the same. I'm more of a constitutional guy.
Sure.
Like I want to see constitutional law in place, and that's more or less what I was calling about, other than to tell you that I had a couple of references that I wanted to hand your way in case you were curious about them.
Sure.
Okay. Including Mark Josie's lawyer, because he's a constitutional lawyer who believes that it's the common law aspect that's being overlooked in all of the current things that, you know, the government's doing. And Dolores Cahill, professor, studies law. Like that's what I wanted to say to you. Maybe you.
That's fair too, because you know, you're quite right to be focused on that, because really these common law advocates, what they're really focused on is changing the government and changing Canada from a dominion into a republic based on a common law
I understand
system.
I understand why some people would want that. I personally would object if someone said to me, I wouldn't want the laws to change, and I wouldn't want our Constitution to change. If there was something to change in the Constitution, it's the notwithstanding clause. Other than that, there's no need to change it. It's not a bad document, and we run the risk of opening it up that it could get so much worse.
Yeah, and so you and I are actually on the same page, because I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I take offense, is because I consider myself appreciating the common law, but I know that there are a whole lot of people that have a whole lot of whacked out ideas or want to take it way too far. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. I'm maybe more of a constitutional kind of guy than like in the constitutional law realm.
Sure.
But when I look at it, I see it through common law. So that's, I don't know.
All these common law groups do share this. They will tell you that Canada is not a legitimate country because we have a de facto government instead of a de jure government. What does that mean? It means that they don't like the system that we have, and yet they're contradictory even in those terms, because they're saying that a de facto government is a government that is not legitimate, but it is the government that we have. They actually admit, because what does de facto mean? It means that it is, in fact, the government. It is the government we have, and yet they sit there and say that it's not legitimate. And then in the next breath, they'll say that the government has no jurisdiction over them because they're sovereign citizens. They have, they never agreed to the contract that the government imposed upon them with their birth certificates. And it goes on from there. And that we need,
and I understand why
what we need is a de jure government, which means a government the way it ought to be, which is a government based on common law, and that really comes from the rights bestowed upon us through the Bible and God. And I understand that. Right. I understand the concept, but they've already admitted by just even describing the government as a de facto government that we actually do have a government in place. And that is de facto, Jack, okay? Because it is de facto. And it is de facto. And you know what makes it legitimate? The cops, the army, the people who vote every day, or not, like in every election rather, the people who pay their taxes every day, the public supports it.
The monopoly of force consensus.
Yeah, the community supports that. And the people want it, because it has taken these common law ideas, and we've taken this, because common law is a very crude thing, really. It's not very refined.
No.
Right?
Crude. It's not really crude.
Well,
I mean, it sounds crude.
It's very it's not specific in many respects. So it
is absolutely specific, because we're not going to get rid of the precedent. As you always refer to the precedent, they're all still going to be there. You just need to acknowledge the common law aspect of the precedent and not just rely on legislation, which is always seen for 3 years, and that's why so many people are unhappy.
But
if people are
because
educated.
The Canadian system is not predicated only on the legislative. It is absolutely based on
I know.
precedent.
It's not. You're right, it's not. But that's all that they've been acknowledging as of late. You can't even get a trial by jury, right? These days you can't. So you can't tell me that it's working properly in how it's been going.
You can get a trial by jury.
These days?
Yeah.
For what?
A lot of things. Murder.
Okay, well, murder, but you should be able to get a trial for jury for pretty much anything that you want to get a trial for jury for. And no, I'm not talking about,
like
a jaywalking
like a
ticket.
traffic ticket.
No, I'm not talking. No, I don't want to deal with traffic tickets.
There you go. There are some things that it's appropriate to have a jury, and in other instances, not. But in
I'm
Canada,
trying to think of an example. I've been trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I've known of people that have been complaining that, because they have to do it through Zoom or whatever, they don't even get a trial by jury anymore. And that's a problem. Whereas before they could.
That's because probably during the pandemic, right? Because they're dealing with provincial offenses.
Right. But that's a violation of their rights. And so my point is, they're not acknowledging the precedents, as you like to say, and as I like to say, but that's all based in common law. And then there's like legislative stuff that, magistrates deal with. But now it seems to be everything is just being done through legislation without public input, without the people. The power rests in us, the people, and yet we have no say. That's why these people are so upset.
But we do. But we do.
Okay, I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you. I don't agree with them. I don't want to abolish everything. Our system could work very well, but it's not working very well. And that's the problem. We need to figure out what the problem is, why it's not working very well. So I understand that they're frustrated.
I would put it to you that you and I are very much on the same page, and that the system does actually work. The system actually does work fairly well. It's just that it hasn't worked very well over the past few years because of the pandemic and because of Section 1 in the Charter.
Yes.
Which needs to be removed or rewritten, because that gives the government too much power or too much ability to revoke people's rights or do an end run around them. That's a big part. That's a big part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that our government, our elected officials, have been too eager to sign international agreements where they essentially turn over some of our. It's not entirely binding, and it can be overturned at any time by any subsequent government, but they are in a way giving up the government's decision-making process, or sovereignty, if you will, by signing on to agreements with the WEF or the WHO or any of these globalist entities, right?
Yeah, those are some of my largest concerns, because we're having a hard time dealing with stuff that we don't think is fair or lawful right now. If they go and involve foreign entities, we're going to be that much further behind.
Right.
So that's my concern.
But keep in mind that any government could just later say, screw that, we're not participating in that anymore. You saw Donald Trump do that with the Paris Accord. Okay, he said, no, we're not going to adhere to that anymore. I know we signed it, but we're canceling. We're backing out, not taking part anymore. And the Canadian government could do exactly the same thing with all of this stuff, including UNDRIP. They could just say, no, not going to do it anymore. In fact, UNDRIP is not binding in itself. The Canadian government is so eager to virtue signal, they passed legislation in Canada to combine with UNDRIP to make it mandatory for governments in Canada to comply with the provisions in the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples. It's the legislation passed here by our own elected officials that did that. And I'll tell you, we do have a say, and the people who went to vote for Justin Trudeau, they're the ones who did it because they support the guy. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. And I know that we feel like I'm not happy with that. I want the guy gone, and I'd like the liberals gone, and I'd like things to be different. But I have to live with the fact that a lot of Canadians, the majority, I guess, maybe not the majority, but the majority who voted for him and what he does. And not just once, but multiple times. So the guy's still in power and he's doing all these things, and we might not be happy about it, but the only way to address that is to go to the polls and vote the guy out. And that means we have to convince enough other Canadians that what is happening is wrong, and convince them that we need to do things differently.
You're exactly right. So I do think that you and I are very close. That's why I listen. And I know that you've been struggling with this for months. Like I said, I remember in the summer you were talking about this. You brought the lawyer on in the fall. No offense, I didn't like that, her take on it. I don't think that she was the right person for that, which is kind of what I was calling you about, because I don't know how to give you the information I had, but I do know that the name of a constitutional lawyer here in Ontario, in your area, and I thought you might be interested in that. And I don't know how open he would be. I saw him on an interview, so on a show like yours, and that's how I got his name. But, and then of course,
well,
sorry?
Yeah, no, I didn't really say anything. You send me his name, or did you already give it to me? Is it one of these names that you already gave me?
No, I haven't sent you anything. That's and I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I mean, I have it right here. I have, a few people that, but if you're not interested and your mind's made up, then it's made up. I just thought I would take one last.
Hey, man, you know what? As a journalist, I'm always looking at stuff. My mind is never, ever completely closed. I'm pretty firm on all of this stuff because I've been looking at it so much. And the more I research it, the more firm I become. But I don't mind learning more and more about it. I have been trying to learn as much as I can to fully understand how these other people, these common law advocates, are thinking. And I've kind of got my head wrapped around it. I do.
I think that there are a whole lot that are right up to lunch. I'm not a part of any group in any way, shape, or form. This is just my own little thing. And the only person I ever hear really talk about it is you. Nobody in my life talks about it.
Right.
So, it's just something I was aware of. And then after you brought it up, I started looking into it, and I actually found a couple of people that really know their stuff. And I was just going to maybe pass that along to you because they're concise. They don't mince words. And I actually have bought into it more. I have dismissed it. That's why I left it alone for so many years. But now with this, I'm thinking we are seeing more of it. I think there is some validity to it. You can't undo it because it is a part of law. So it's like, I think we're going to see more of it. And these people, like, you know who Dr. Cahill is, Dolores Cahill, the Irish woman. Well, apparently, who knew? I thought she was just an expert in medicine or something, but it's actually the other way around. She seems to be an expert in law. And there's another British guy that's pretty good. And that's why I stopped originally. I couldn't find a single Canadian that could help me. And the Americans have a different system. So I ended up looking to Britain for answers. And then it was just too hard. So I kind of quit looking at it years ago when I was first looking at it. And then it just keeps creeping up. And I think we're going to see more of it and hear more about it.
It's everywhere. As far as, I mean, in my mind, and I don't like this common law stuff, as you know. I see it as a cancer. And it is.
I don't think maybe we should be shaping those.
It is, in my view, a cancer because it's not realistic. It's not because
you can't not have it.
We don't need to address it in the way that these guys want to address it because we already have it.
I'll give you that. Yes, you're right. You're correct. I won't argue that one for sure. But you can't do away with common law. It's with us for life. That's just fact. And to give up your inalienable.
I agree with you. You're right. That's true. And you can go to the universities, to the law schools, and you'll see that, even outside some of the buildings, it says common law right on the sign.
Exactly. But I don't know how much they're expressing it well to the people inside the buildings.
Well, they do.
Anyway,
because
I always
it's absolutely addressed, right?
If they don't address the Constitution and constitutional law, I don't think they get a really good whiff of it. If that's my take, I could be wrong. I don't know what goes on in those buildings. So
yeah. And I'm not a lawyer. But see, it's
right. Well, I'm sorry I got your heart rate up. That was totally not my intention, and I didn't expect any of what we got into.
Yeah. No, this has been a pretty good conversation. I know that what the real objective is to get rid of the government. That's what they want. Because it's not just about the law or the legal system. It's about constitutional law, whether Canada's a legitimate government. That's what all of this is focused on. Canada is not a legitimate government. It's a de facto government, not a de jure government. We need a de jure government. Canada is not even a real country. We don't even have a constitution. It doesn't exist. Yeah, well, you know what? Canada is a corporation. No, Canada is not a corporation. Canada is a dominion. It's also a sovereign country. It absolutely is. Corporations do not have the ability to print their own currency. Corporations do not.
Yeah, they do.
No, corporations don't print their own currency.
Canadian Tire does.
No, it's not. That's not legal tender. Those are coupons.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Well, yes.
People get confused though, because there are crown corporations. The government creates corporations. And again, people think that's to screw you. It isn't. It's to protect you. You see, the reason the government will create a crown corporation is so that you can conduct business transactions with individuals or companies, or you have other corporations even, and that way you're on a level plane. It's not fair if I, as an individual, want to engage in a business transaction with a government, because the government writes all the rules. But if they create a crown corporation, and then I engage, if I own a paving company and they need a highway paved, then they'll have a crown corporation set up that I then enter into a contract with to provide the service and the highway. I build the highway, the crown corporation pays me. If there's a dispute, some sort of a legal dispute, I can then go to court and we with that crown corporation, and we resolve it within the legal system, and we're both equals, we're peers, because they're the crown corporation and I own the paving company. We're both companies, and we're peers with equal rights and obligations under the system, even though it's a crown corporation. Now, it may not be entirely equal and the system might not be perfect, but that's what the idea is. That's why they create crown corporations. Then I'm not just dealing with a prime minister or dealing with even the king by extension, because we are still part of the Commonwealth. Okay. But that's why they create crown corporations. Now, other levels of government are corporations. For instance, municipalities. They began to incorporate municipalities. So here in Chatham-Kent, Ontario, where I live, it is the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent. And the reason they do that is, again, so that they can enter into contracts on a peer-to-peer basis with companies to facilitate servicing the population. If they want to outsource garbage pickup, which is the case here in my community, the municipality doesn't actually pick up the garbage. They outsource it to a waste company, a waste management firm. There's a contract between the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent and that waste management company. And that's how they can conduct business, as opposed to just a government entity. And it's, again, there so that mechanism, that business mechanism and legal mechanism is there so that all parties are then able to function and operate on a level playing field. But people get very confused. The common law advocates intentionally are confusing people by saying Canada is just a service corporation. It's not true. Canada is a sovereign nation state with its own constitution, which was patriated in the 1980s under Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and it's a real document. And they'll say that it doesn't exist, but it does. And I can run you the video in the House of Commons. It's all historical fact. It's a real thing. And Canada is, you know what else makes Canada an actual bona fide, legitimate nation state? Because it, as sovereign nation state, because other sovereign nation states around the world recognize it as such. That's why.
Yeah, that's important. And if it's registered with the postal, whatever it's called, that's a big one. I don't know why it's always the postal one, but
yeah. That's why it's
you know
such
what
a
I mean?
big deal when there's a military conflict. That's why in Russia, like when, you know, in the Donbass and those disputed areas, the West, NATO, the United States is saying they had that referenda to determine whether the people really wanted to join Russia or stay with Ukraine. We don't recognize it. It's a sham. So they're saying that that's still part of Ukraine, and Russia is now disputing it. And so that is in question, right? Or if there's if a dictator overthrows a government in a country, then sometimes certain countries will recognize that as a nation state and say, yes, that guy's in charge, that dictator's in charge, and we'll recognize that country as a bona fide, legitimate nation state, and we'll deal with them on that level. Or they may not. They may say, that guy's just a dictator. He's not the legitimate ruler of that country. We don't recognize that's a legitimate nation state being run by that dictator. And this guy over here who fled the country on an airplane, that's the legitimate leader. And we'll only negotiate with that person. The person who was exiled, the former president of country XYZ. And so all these other countries then, you know, in order to make that country a legitimate nation state, you know what it ultimately comes down to? Whether the guy in charge there actually has enough guns and firepower and enough authority to assert in the international community to convince the other countries that, hey, man, you don't mess with me because I've got all these guns over here. You want to take me on? Is it worth it to you? That ultimately is what it comes down to. That's why in international law, it's the law of the jungle largely. You want to talk about common law? There it lies in international law. And that is the law of the jungle. That is where common law is really employed, because it really comes down to thou shalt not kill. Okay, really? Who's enforcing these laws? Well, whoever has the most guns ultimately. That's why it's fortunate that we live in a democracy, because we hold the government accountable. We at least have some ability to restrain the power of government, which is in a democracy really supposed to be there to protect our rights. But when you put somebody like Justin Trudeau in power and they overreach, then the system becomes abusive. And they distort it. And that's why the people are unhappy right now. But it doesn't mean the system has to be completely thrown out.
Right. We have to keep them legitimate.
Yes.
Speaking of what makes a nation, though, I wasn't kidding when I said about the International Postal Union. It has to be recognized by them. It has to have a flag. It has to have territory, sovereign people. It has to have its own system of law. And of course, it has to have territory and ultimately the ability to enforce it.
Right.
There's 5 things plus the ability to enforce it, like the military you're talking about.
Yeah. And, you know, in Canada, Canada's a very unique country because we have First Nations and they are sovereign unto themselves. They are nations within a nation. And that's why UNDRIP, in my view, is dangerous for them, because UNDRIP represents an affront to the current Canadian system. And while it's being adopted and the Canadian government's trying to integrate it, it's so vaguely written that it really upsets the balance here. And in reality, it's a trick, because First Nations don't need the United Nations to give them anything. They are already unconquered nations within Canada. They are that's why they call it unseeded, not like seeds that you plant. It's like they haven't given it up. They never gave it up, their territory, right? So they have their own land mass, they have their own areas, their own communities, and they have the right to self-govern. They are sovereign nations within the nation state of Canada. It's a very unique situation.
And it seems to me from UNDRIP, they treat all First Nations as one group, and they are individual, distinct groups.
I think there are over
Even
600 different ones across the country, yes.
Yes. I mean, and just go from one res to another. You know, one res might even fight with another. That was my experience.
Yeah.
And their cultural differences. Actually, it's funny. In one of the friendship centers I worked in, our secretary was from one band, and one of the counselors was from another, and he liked to smudge. Well, she got the rest of the day off because to her, he was conjuring up spirits, and she would get right freaked out. And the only way we could deal with it was to give her the afternoon off after he would smudge his office. I mean, and, you know, they live 10 miles apart from each other, but two different bands with two different traditions.
Right. Yeah, UNDRIP doesn't address those differences at all. That's again why it's dangerous. I don't think it's not going to serve Canada well, and in many respects, I think it sets us back because we've made so much progress. I think at least First Nations have made a lot of progress toward resolving a lot of these long-standing land claims and other issues that face their communities, and it's long overdue, man. We need to step up and do more to address all of that for them. But UNDRIP, I don't think is helpful. I think it takes us back, and that's why I think again it's kind of a trap.
And my concern is it's not just Trudeau that wants to hand over our sovereignty or things like this. It's both sides of that aisle, as near as I can tell.
Yes.
So we have bigger concerns, and I think, like you said, I think we're very much on the same page.
Yeah.
I come from a different vantage, I guess, than you do on this. So anyway,
I don't know. I just I also see that what is going on out there is there's an ongoing effort to inject volatility into the system to keep things as disrupted as they possibly can because they are pushing for this change. They want the system gone, and they want to replace it with a common law based idea.
So you're talking about like the West, like Alberta area.
Yeah, I mean,
they'd almost be better to just separate. If they separated, they could accomplish that far more easy. If that's the ultimate goal, get power there and then separate. But I mean, they have no use for us now anyway, as near as I can tell.
Yeah.
My friends, when I was at West, just saw us as a burden. Quebec and Ontario, and the Maritimes, just leech. Right? That was the attitude.
Yeah. But if they succeed in doing this kind of stuff, if I hear so many people saying we need to take Canada back, we need to save Canada. Really? Because when I listen to them and say it in one breath that way, they're really advocating for the complete destruction of the country and replacing it with this whole other new system that I'm not even sure what it is. But that's not getting Canada back. You and I are talking about, that's getting Canada back. That's changing that section, right, of the charter, which I think underpins all of the problems that we've had over the past 3 years. What they're talking about.
But don't you think changing that? Sorry, no.
What they're talking about is decoupling from the monarchy, abolishing our ties to the Commonwealth, reestablishing the country with some sort of a rewritten or new constitution that really creates a republic instead of, as I say, a dominion that is based on common law ideas. And that's why you keep seeing the phrases, we the people. It's a republic. And people think that that's really, that's an American sort of an idea, which is okay. But it isn't really about being American. That's all based on common law concepts. We the people, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Those are American words but people again, I think are kind of missing the boat on it when they are missing the point of why they're using that language. They're injecting common law ideas. It's not just American ideas. And if you think that just creating a republic is the solution to our problems in Canada, creating something, even if you wanted an American style system, they have plenty of problems in the US. In fact,
damn straight.
Changing things politically in the US is more difficult than it is in Canada. Look, they've wound up with basically a two-party system, and it's like you get to choose between, you want bad or do you want worse? And you hear the arguments here. Well, do you want liberal light, or liberal extreme? Well, that's kind of true. But as I just showed you tonight, all you have to do is go back as recently as the early 1990s, and the politics in this country was completely mixed up and flipped upside down because of reform, because of the disintegration and reformation of conservatives in this country through the Reform Party, then the reformation of the conservative movement and the Canadian Alliance, and then finally the Conservative Party of Canada. And now it's splintered off again into this PPC thing. And you see, that's how volatile Canadian politics is. People who think that we can't change things, yes, we can. And it'll be like, bam, before you know it, it's just completely different. How many times has the country almost completely disintegrated? How many times have we, at least twice, Quebec almost left the country?
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking major.
Yeah, for that was a interesting time. I was concerned about that. I was very young at the time, but nonetheless, I was still very concerned about that.
Yeah. So don't give up hope. If you want things to change, they can change dramatically. See, for me, I kind of look back at certain periods of time, and I want that back. And I think Canada still holds a lot of promise. I love the country. I see what it was for a while, and I want that. I don't want to destroy it. I don't want it gone. I do want it back. I want it back with a few minor improvements. I want to take the old car and fix her up. I don't want to destroy it and replace it with something completely different. I don't think it's productive. I don't think it's necessary. And that honestly is what these common law groups are advocating for. They're telling all the followers, they're telling them all, we're going to take the country back. No, you're not. You're going to destroy the country and then seize power and turn it into something completely different. And it isn't entirely clear what that is.
Right. Most of the information I get on those groups, I get from you. So I can't even comment on them for the most part. I get the odd tidbit here and there, other than from your show, but not much. I get most of what's going on out there from yourself. The idea of a republic, I mean, republics work, but I wouldn't tear down what we have to take the chance on something else. I wish the Commonwealth was more of a value to us, even in just if it was easier to travel between Commonwealth countries. But it seems to have, in my lifetime, not been a real fringe benefit for me. I had a couple of professors, and for them it was. They had British passports, and they were able to travel through Caribbean and other places terribly easy. They said more easy than I ever could with my Canadian passport.
Yeah.
However, I do have a question. If we did try to change that, the notwithstanding clause, we'd have to open up the Constitution, and is it worth it? Like, I don't know. This is, if somebody asked me, I don't know what I would.
I think it is. I think it is because, you could, I think you can deal with it on that limited scale, just dealing with that one thing, but there is a process, and I can't remember how many provinces have to agree to do it. I think it's 7,
this sounds familiar.
7 out
Yeah.
of 10 or something. I'd have to look up the process, but you have to have like a big majority to do it. And rightly so, because the Constitution and the Charter need to be, very, very firm, because they're supposed to be there to limit government power and protect our rights. So it has to be very difficult to open it up and change it. It should be, and it is. That's appropriate. But it could be done. All it takes is enough people to support it. But if we can't get
like a common law group.
the reason you have so many people running around saying we need to overthrow the government, we need to, we've been peaceful, it's time to stand up, and all of this stuff, you know why? Because they can't get enough public support to win at the polls. And they're frustrated. Well, I'm sorry. But for me, it's the only way. I'm not going to support anything else. Me. It has to be that way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, even if you rise up, even if you got violent, if you had a civil war, what are you doing then? Is that democracy? That's not democracy. Now you're imposing your will on the majority. And you could say, well, they got the Kool-Aid in the arm and everybody's dying and the children are dying. Okay, I get it. But nevertheless, you want to go to war to bring in this new system that you think is going to solve all the problems, but you're going to impose it on the majority of people who voted for Trudeau? You're going to impose that on them. So what have you achieved? All you've really done is you've created an even more volatile situation where they're going to push back on you. That's not a solution. There's only one way to get to the solution, and that is to get Canadians on board en masse behind whatever it is that you want. You have to win the hearts and the minds of the people and get the public support behind it, and it will happen. That's what you have to do. If you want to, so you get two ways to do that. You either do it through sound arguments and a democratic system, or you do it with the barrel of a gun put to somebody's head. And you either convince them one way or you convince them the other. And I'm not about doing it the violent way. And that's the way politics and government works. So pick your path. And if anybody's telling you anything different, they're freaking lying. Two choices is what it will come down to in the end. So pick your poison.
Right. Yeah, we're in tough times.
We are. Never tougher. Pray.
I hope when things get straightened. Pray. You're right about that for sure. You got a man of faith here, but it's trying on faith these days. I can tell you that. The direction of everything.
Yes, sir.
I do pray that if we get this ship righted again, that we have better mechanisms, or if we can put better mechanisms in place to respond to such unhappiness within our country and address that notwithstanding clause.
Yeah. Yeah. Stay focused on the problem, or the problems, and keep your focus on the people who can make the changes. And that's the politicians. Put the pressure on them. It's the same thing with this drag queen storytime stuff, right? And what's going on in the schools. You're not going to achieve anything by running out and getting angry and engaging in these crazy protests at the schools where you're shouting at the transgender people or people from the LGBTQS+ community. No. I think they're pawns in it too. Like that does you're just making enemies there, right? You're fighting. You got to take it to the politicians, man, and say, what the hell are you doing? Why are you? I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't agree with the programs. I don't agree with the funding that you're putting in place to incentivize this stuff. Take it to the politicians. Take it to the school board trustees. Take it to the senior levels of government that provide the funding that is transfer funding is what it is. It comes from the feds to the province, to the municipalities, to the school boards, and from the province straight to the school boards, right? Take it to the bureaucrats and take it to the politicians who can make the changes. But arguing with Jim or Sally or Frank or George down at the whatever, two groups came and clashed today in a giant protest where they tore each other's eyes out while they beat each other's with their picket signs. Duh, you're just being used.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder about that because you see the same faces, and I wondered, are both sides being paid to be there at this point? Because
or manipulated.
The one side admitted it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And they're used. And these both sides are using these disputes, these conflicts for political purposes. You go down to one of those protests, I'm telling you, you are being duped. You are being used. Doesn't matter which side you're on. You're being used. You're being used as a pawn in a big political game. They want you fighting. They do.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say animosity. I guess that'll work. Animosity between groups is, you can use that energy and you can direct it, no matter what your objective is.
They get you jacked up. They get you angry. And then you are motivated. Yep. You are motivated to campaign. You're motivated to canvass during elections. You're motivated to go door to door to convince people to vote for XYZ candidate in your community. You're motivated to go out there and cast your ballot. You're motivated to get online on social media because you're so emotional and spew your political rhetoric one way or the other in support of this or that. They use that emotion. And they use that as advertising too. When you see these two sides clashing, both sides use it. You're being used as pawns.
Yeah, they probably wondered why they hadn't thought of this one and employed it first or sooner to get people upset and aggravated like this and off their games.
Yeah. Yes, sir. This was a great call, Steve. I'm glad we had this conversation, and I hope I didn't jump down your throat too harshly.
No, that's okay. I'm a big boy, and I didn't mean to trigger you. I get why it's triggering, and you're right about how I said I think you're missing something, and I didn't have an explanation behind it. But I don't think I'm the one to best explain it, and I think it's the constitutional law part of it that even I was not articulating, and I know I come at it from a different vantage point than 95% of what I hear on the internet. And I was just very happy to come across Dolores Cahill talking about it. It actually shocked me. I wasn't ready for it. And she is so effective in expressing how she views it and what she understands of it. And then there's a couple other people too. But
yeah, well,
so it changed my opinion a bit more. But,
all right. Well, listen.
But no, I appreciate your time always. Your vantage point. And I always think that I wouldn't have stuck around. And if I hadn't known how much you struggled with it over the summer and fall, I might have thought that I would have probably been annoyed and thought, I don't understand why Rick is dismissing this. He has maybe a motivation of his own. But I saw you struggle with it. So I knew that you were being genuine in what you were saying and what you were trying to do. But I have seen you get more and more turned off from it. And you're inundated by this stuff. I'm not. And you see what's going on elsewhere, and I don't. So, you have far more contacts than I do, obviously. So, you know things I just don't. So, I can understand why it's very frustrating for you.
Well, I'm glad we had the conversation because it has given me a greater understanding of your position too, and it actually has allowed us for me to realize that we are closer together on this than I knew. So, I'm grateful.
Well, then, me too. I'm glad. I didn't realize you thought that we were that far apart because I've often felt in our conversations that we, had pretty much a parallel track on things in general. Not on this, obviously, but on everything else.
Yeah, no, you've enlightened me that way. I didn't realize either that we were so closely aligned. So I'm extremely grateful for your patience.
Anytime. That's what it's all about, Rick.
Okay.
Patience for one another. Trying to, get these understandings amongst people, and so. I said, I appreciate it all the time.
All right, we'll move on. We'll pick up some of these other calls. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Okay, here's, I think is it Ashley?
Axel.
Sorry, who is it?
Axel.
How are you? You're calling from Alabama?
Axel. Yes, sir.
Well, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, man. I was going to say I was going to answer a lot of those questions, but y'all didn't answer all my questions. I was going to say about the common law, and what's the difference between common law and American cowboy law?
American cowboy law. Now that's a curveball you just threw at me. I'll have to educate myself.
All right,
on
now
that.
look. All right, now the cowboy law is a theory where it's the law before the American law. If you understand what I'm going here. See, my grandparents and my aunts is all into the Civil War stuff and everything. My grandparents got these houses and stuff like this. It's ancient, so I know my little history here, you know. But there's a cowboy law. The cowboy law is stronger than the American law because the American law is just a book that's been made up where you don't understand the law. You understand? So they try to confuse people with the cowboy law. See, the cowboy law is like, say, if just say like me and you was in a bar, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And just say like I picked a fight with you, right? And just say like you had a gun and you was gonna pull it out on me, and I took your gun away from you and I shot you with your gun. Now who's responsible here? It's now the law has turned over where the guy who brought the gun, you know what I mean? I take the gun away from you from robbing me. Now I'm guilty. You see what I'm saying? So that is the American law. Now, back in the days, now the cowboy law, hey, who's got the quickest gun? You know what I mean? Who's got the hand? So if you're going to rob me, I'm going to rob you before you even think about robbing me, you know? So that's the difference. You can look it up whenever you get time, Rick, and look up cowboy law. You know what I mean? And you'll understand. It'll come up with Google, and it'll show you what the difference is between the Google of American law and the Bible law. And that's why whenever I told you before when I called into you and I told you if you can believe in the Bible, you know what I mean? That's what everybody wants to do is take the Bible away from us. So that's what the American law is. They want to take the Bible away from us, but the cowboy law is the Bible. So if you believe in the badge, you don't need a Bible. I mean, I know I got you in a flip zone, but I just heard what y'all was saying with the common law, you know?
Yeah.
But whenever you get time, look it up.
All right, thanks. I appreciate the call. I'll do that. I'll look up cowboy law and educate myself on that front as well. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's like I said, right now, the Americans is running off of their own law. There is no law right here, right now. Man, I can walk in somebody's house and take their TV out of their freaking house, right? And if you have a gun, I can take your gun away and shoot you, and you will go to jail for shooting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand how the system has been sort of turned against the people in that way, and a lot of things don't make sense.
Yeah, and like I said, you got an aggravating. Now, aggravating is worstest thing. I can get an aggravating. I got one of those with my ex-wife, you know what I mean? Because I went into where she used to work like 4 or 5 years after she done quit there, and I get an aggravated stalking charge. You know what I mean? Yeah. The aggravated charge is worse than you can go in there and shoot someone in the yard. That is the worstest crime you can ever get. Is a stalking, you know what I mean? Because I already went through this. I was facing 20 years, man, for aggravated stalking. Not only I was facing it for going for a man. You know what I mean? Come on, bro. You know? And like I said, they would just, you know what I mean? There's different laws in common law, you know? You got common law marriage, you know what I mean? You can use somebody overnight, buy them a pack of cigarettes, you're already marriage.
That's right. Listen, we're going to move on. I appreciate the call. I've got them stacked up here. But
hey, don't forget, Rick, to look that up for me, man, and I'll get back with you and see what you think about it.
I'll make a point of looking up cowboy law. Thank you. I will.
All right, thank you, Rick. Y'all have a night. I love Rick's world, bro.
Thank you. Appreciate the call.
All right, go on, brother.
And I will definitely look that up. Okay. Hello, Simon.
Thank you, Rick.
You're on the air, Sandy.
Hi,
Take it away.
Happy Easter! Yay!
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you? Did you have a good birthday?
It wasn't my birthday.
It was your father's birthday.
Right. It was my father's birthday and my son's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Mine was Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday. Belated.
Thank you. It's just a number.
No, it's not. It's your day. It's
Yes, it's your day.
It's
It is
your
also a
day.
number.
That's right.
It's your birthday.
Yeah.
Okay, so your guest last night was Lori,
Yeah. Well, she's kind of
and you guys were talking about Bahang.
Bahang's.
Bahang.
Yeah.
So I've been doing some homework here too where I live, and there are no Bahangs where you can walk in.
Yeah.
And I've had some issues, and I'm learning about ATMs.
Right.
So what's going on with the Bahangs?
Well, yesterday we were talking about a Bahang, which was based on
Bahang. I like when you do it. You do it better.
Bahang,
Bahang.
because they're even spelling Bahang with two A's.
With
I
two
I
A's.
don't want to get into the exact name of what this entity or proposed bank is, because it's not really a bank,
Bahang.
and they're not calling it a bank, but they're proposing it as a bank to people. And so it's not really directly related to the banking system or what you're talking about. What you're talking about is
Yeah.
the banks have changed the way they service their customers. And I did talk about this where,
Yep.
most branches don't even exist anymore, where you walk up to a wicket and talk to a teller. Like, right? You're to a,
They're not existing anymore.
Right,
It's
because-
getting very challenging.
right. Because they've got
And my
ATMs.
sister
Everything is
lives in-
digitized.
Yeah, and my sister lives in a small town. I won't name the town, but there was a TD bank in her town. There are no banks, zero,
Yeah.
in her town.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Well, these banks usually do have a bricks and mortar location where you can go and still make an appointment to open an account with someone, or sit down.
Yes.
Like, you'll sit down at a desk and have a consultation to take out a loan, or
Yes.
or deal with some
So
administrative
the
thing.
issue that I've been having is, I won't name the branch of the bank that I use, but the bank app.
Yeah.
When you go to use an app,
Yes.
I'm having issues with a password.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this is bizarre. So then you call the number that is related to your bank. And then you call the number, and then they tell you to go into your local bank.
Yeah.
And talk to your teller or talk to whoever it is you need to talk to in there, and they will help you. So every time that I need a new password, I have to go into the bank. It's weird. It's so weird. And you guys were talking about this last night, and I remember because I love Lori. She's such a good person. She's such a sweetheart. She's a very good lady. And she's right about a lot of things going on.
Yeah. She is at
Yeah,
that. Yes.
I listen to her, and she's very right. So I do have one other thing I wanted to talk about. I'm having a hard time with this common law thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, because I'm not married, I'm not in a common law, and I don't understand what it is. So maybe you can give me a little bit of info on it.
Well, I thought we just did, but
Well, I
it's
need a woman's side view on it, because I'm not married.
Okay.
And I've never been married, and I'd like to someday, and I'm setting a goal. And like, I don't know is it before marriage? Is it, I don't know.
Common law? You mean like if you live common law with someone? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, like I don't know what you mean. I don't know what they're talking about with this common law political thing. It's confusing.
Sure, I understand that it would be confusing because common law is based on sort of the law of God. It's not really about the law within the Canadian legal system. It's it's a concept that it's just laws that come from God. You want to find out what the law is, you refer to the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill.
You go to the.
It flows from there.
You go to the big guy.
It flows from all of the common law. Sort of flows from there, from the Bible, the laws that have been agreed upon or that are, that you have certain inalienable rights, and then because of those rights, then laws are established over time through common law precedent. So,
so it's regarding the Bible.
Sort of, yeah. They're saying that your rights come from God, and that it all flows from there. And it's supposed to be a very simple system, but it's also something that they're referring to say that the Canadian legal system is not legitimate, that the Canadian government is not legitimate, that the U.S. government is not legitimate because it's all made up law. That people just made these laws up through legislation, and that's not real law. That's not lawful. That's legal. That's legal, but not lawful, because legal things are man-made laws. They want only
man-made laws.
Yeah, they want lawful laws that come from God through the common law system. And they're saying that legislative things are legal.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor. Thou shalt not do this. Thou shalt not do that. Love thy neighbor. Love thyself before anyone else.
Well, so that's a very basic explanation of what it would be.
Okay, because I wasn't sure.
And then,
thank you.
As far as common law is concerned, you see, in the Canadian legal system, you can get married and get a marriage certificate, and then you can register that with the government to show the government that you've entered into holy wedlock and that you're living together and you're a husband and a wife. And then because you've notified the government, then you would be able to avail yourself of different tax breaks or programs through the government, or that you're a family now, and then your taxes would be dealt with differently if it if at any time you dissolve your relationship because you've established a legal relationship as a husband and wife in marriage, then there are legal obligations that come into play, and that's why you have to go to court to annul your marriage. And then one party has to pay the other party, and then it's like, who gets the house and who gets the kids, who gets the dog, right? So that's dealt with. But if you're just living in a common law relationship, that's saying, screw you, government, I don't need to register with you. I'm just going to live common law. We're in a relationship, but I don't need a piece of paper from the government to tell me that I'm married or what kind of relationship I'm in with someone. I'm just going to live common law with somebody. But the government in Canada and in the US too, and I'm not sure exactly what the provisions set out in the US legal system are, but in Canada, if you live with someone for a certain period of time in a common law relationship, the Canadian legal system does automatically then recognize that as a legal marriage. So if you move in with someone and you live, I think it's a year. I could be wrong.
Is it a year?
I think I don't
it's
quote
still
me.
A year?
Don't quote me, but there's a specified period of time. I think it's a year. You live with someone for that period of time. As far as in the eyes of the legal system in Canada at that point, you are legally married, which means that if you split up, whoever it is that's
Right.
living with you could take you to court, and
Right.
then you would have to deal with the Canadian legal system, because you would then, in the
Okay.
eyes of the law, have to have these legal obligations under a common law marriage recognized by the Canadian government as a then legal marriage. And that is done because it's intended to protect people again, from
Okay.
abusive relationships where people contribute to a relationship that you've been living together, and maybe you're a woman with children, right? And you've lived with someone in a
No,
common law
I have no.
relationship,
No, I
but
don't.
you see, so that's why the legal system addresses it that way. And that's why a
Okay.
common law system in itself might not be adequate, because if you're just simply living in a common law relationship and you've got 5 kids, and then your husband cheats on you and says, screw you, I'm out of here, man. I'm gonna go move in with Donna down the street because she's half your age and better looking than you. You know, so you
And
too
she
bad
cooks
for you. You
better.
take care of the kids. I'm out of here. Right? Well, that's not very
Yeah.
good if there's no recourse through the common law system. Who's going to enforce
Yeah.
that, right? So the Canadian
Yeah.
legal
Yeah.
system
Yeah.
says, no, not so fast there, Johnny boy. You can't go
John
down and
boy.
just hang out with Donna. You got to pay. You got to pay and take care of them kidlets, or
You got
else.
two. You got to look after them giblets.
That's right. So there again,
So
that shows the shortcoming of just a straight up common law system.
yeah, I'm learning this too because I don't have children. I've never been married, so I guess you could say I'm a spinster.
Oh no, you don't.
I
You're
know,
far
I
too
know.
bright and bubbly to be a spinster.
Yeah,
You're probably
I know.
beating them off with a stick every day.
But you know what? Since the pandemic, it's changed.
What's changed? Dating?
A lot has changed. Dating has changed. Trust issues have changed. A lot has changed ever since. And I don't blame it on people. I blame it on the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I blame
it on the.
I blame this changes in society on the politicians and the bureaucrats.
It's society. It's the bureaucrats. It's a little bit of everything. I'm not a Biden fan. I'm not a Trump fan. I never was and never will be. Like my father, when I knew my father, he was a libertarian.
Yeah.
And he used to say to me, if there's something you want in life, you work for it.
Darn right. That's right.
You're darn tootin'.
You're darn tootin'. And therein lies the foundation of your cowboy law. You're darn tootin'.
You're darn tootin'. And I don't believe in this cheating crap. I don't believe in this, like, having 13 kids on welfare. I don't believe in it.
Well, it sounds like you would be one heck of a catch. If I wasn't married, I'd be right on down there. But I'm a taken. I'm a sorry. And the cowboy law stipulates that if you go wandering down the street, then you got some splaining to do when you get back home.
You have to explain it to Lucy.
That's right. So we won't have none of that.
We don't want none of that going on. No. Well, my sister bought a house in Florida, right?
Yeah.
And I want to go there one day. I just did my ID card, and you won't believe what I went through doing my ID card.
Well, I know doing your hair and makeup for the photo on your ID card. It's a process, is what it is.
It's a process.
It is. It's a process.
Well, I was there last week and I did it on my birthday, and they all clapped because, yay, she did it. She aced it.
Well, good for
but
you.
You know what? Thank you. It's just data. There's a lot of data out there.
A lot of data?
Data. Or data, or what?
Data? Data.
Data, data, boo.
Well, if you're a Star Trek fan, Star Trek The Next Generation, it's Data, not Data.
It's Data. Do you remember
Data.
him?
Oh,
used to
I
like
do.
him.
Brent Spiner. I met Brent Spiner.
You did?
I did, in the flesh.
Really? What was he like? I can't imagine.
He was intelligent.
Was he?
He was, I think, pretty left-wing in his political views that he kind of came out. But he was very accommodating. It was nice. And we actually did an interview for my television show. I didn't do the interview. Someone that was working with me did the interview with him.
Right.
But I was there that day, and I actually did the camera work during the interview. So yeah, he was a nice fella. Yeah.
He was pretty good. You know what? I yet to meet someone in the celebrity scene. So if I ever do, I hope it'll be you.
Well, you're meeting me right now.
Well, you're an angel.
Well, sometimes I'm just a little devil.
Well, I think we all have a little bit of devilish in us.
That's right. That's right. We do. And
The
that's
devil
okay.
wears pride.
That's right. Remember
But
Flip?
you
Do you
know
remember?
what?
Do you remember Flip Wilson, the comedian?
Yeah, I
The
remember
devil
him.
made me do it.
The devil made me do it.
Yeah.
Yep. But you know what? The LGBTQT plus S plus it's in the United States too.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated issue, and I have nieces and nephews, and we're all women. We're all men in we're all men in our family, men, women. We're all doing well.
Well, that's good. Sandy, I got to move on because the clock is
All
ticking
right.
and the calls are stacked high.
And the clock is ticking, and we keep on kicking.
That's right. All right. Thank you. I appreciate the call.
Happy Easter.
To you too. You always brighten my day.
Oh, thank you. You too.
See ya.
Cheers.
Good luck finding a man.
I'll let you know.
A husband. You're not supposed to
But
let
it'll
that
be
out of the
hush
bag.
hush.
You're supposed to say,
No, don't let it out of the bag.
yeah, you don't tell them that you're
Hey,
looking for a
Sandy,
husband.
you got the mouth that south the man without a plan to master all disasters.
Yeah.
How old are you?
You're not supposed to ask that question of a lady, Leo. That's why she just hung up on you.
Well, she just hung up on me, eh? Yeah, well, we're all wondering how old she is.
Yeah, well.
Love her. Sandy Anderson, that's your name.
Yes.
I know you. You're a maverick. Fine, good caller. Makes me laugh. So, let's get into the laws. We got the Shahara law, the common law, the Jeffrey Feiger law. We got the laws of physics. We got Murphy's law. I really like Murphy's law. But I'll tell you what, Steve, when you go to court for anything criminal, you have different court appearances, and one of it's for your election. An election means either by judge or by jury. And if you're jammed up in a criminal court, you have the right to select a jury. Now, why you don't see a lot of juries is because there's a lot of lazy lawyers out there. When you get a jury, you got to go through selection, okay? And there's a lot of lazy lawyers out there that don't want to do their job. That's the bottom line. But I always have the right for a jury of my peers. So that's the Canadian law. Now, the only law I listen to is the law of the land, and that's the Canadian law that's written. That's all that really matters, folks. You could come across with your shit hair law, okay, or your common law. It's all the same to me. Now, Shahara law might be a little bit different, okay, but it's based along the same bullshit at the end of the day, okay? It's Allah's law or whatever, the laws of Allah, who is the God in Islam, and then you got the common law, which is the God of North America, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't buy any of it. All I know is that I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in my life on lawyers. So I know a little bit about the law. I've spent more time in courts than a lot of lawyers have. Okay? And that's the bottom line. You break the law, you pay the piper. Plain and simple.
Yep.
You don't like it? You can try your common law. It's not going to work. You know, I do like my law. That's if you burn me, I burn you back twice as bad.
Yeah.
Right? I keep getting these fucked up phone calls from Easy Life Financial, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I finally answered, and so, we're wondering if you know this person, you're using me as a reference to get a loan from Easy Life Financial, and they're around fucking 22% interest.
Ouch.
I said, listen, anybody that I know that needs money that bad, for half the juice money, that's 10%. I'll loan it to you. Those rates, that's a lot of juice money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know where they get off calling people, or how these people are getting away with loaning money at those interest rates. But that's no different from the mob in my eyes.
Huge interest. Never pay
It is.
that off.
You might as well be borrowing from the Montreal Mafia or the
Yep.
Erie Street Boys or wherever and how you are, right?
Yep.
Those are huge numbers. By the grace of God, my credit's perfect. Everything looks good. I'm great on paper. I could walk into a bank tomorrow and grab myself a $250,000 loan if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Line of credit, whatever you call it, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's through the banks. And I see a lot of guys that are doing that, and they're, I want to get a home renovation done on my house. And I'm thinking, well, you should have did that when interest rates were near nothing.
Right. When the
Right?
money was pretty much free. Yeah.
It was free. Yeah. Yeah. That's when you should have taken it out. Right. But right now, the way the interest rates are, I wouldn't take 10 cents from the bank.
Yeah.
You know, see, if you really need it, I guess you really need it. Right. Times are rough, times are hard. Here's your fucking Easter cards, folks. If you need that money, get it. Right. But, you know, it is what it is. And it's funny. Remember we were discussing green steel?
Yes, I remember.
Well, I'm looking at a whole pile of it right now.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm cutting it right now. And if you know anything a little bit about math, okay, an eighth of an inch is 0.125 thousandths. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an eighth of an inch. Now, normal steel, P20 tooling steel, I could cut an eighth of an inch, which is 125 thousandths of an inch. Mm-hmm. Now, with this green steel, I can only cut 50 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so I can't cut it like I can normal steel.
Okay.
I'll do a video. I'll show you the video. I'll send you the video later on tonight.
Cool. Yeah.
But it looks like steel, smells like steel. It's cutting a lot bluer than regular steel. Like the chips that fly off it are blue. Okay, it looks like jewelry coming off it, right? So, yeah, it's different.
And that's because when they make it, what is it because of the it's all done with electricity? Is that what it is? So there are no gases involved?
It would have to be the alloys. I don't know what the alloys are in it. I could take a picture of the tag if it's got the alloys on it, but it's different from regular tooling steel. I don't know how it's going to compare when they start shooting with molds and shit like that, right? Because it's a new product, right? So time will only tell on that, right? So who knows? Yeah, who knows? Is it cheaper? No. In the end, the government's making everybody buy it by the looks of it, right? So it's sort of like getting rid of your plastic bags at the supermarket.
Yeah.
What a joke. Now they charge me 35 cents a bag at the Great Canadian Superstore, Shoppers Drug Mart, wherever I am. I got so many of these bags, Rick. It's a joke, right? It's like I got so many of these bags. My wife's, what are you going to do with all these bags? Well, I got a great idea what I'm going to do with these bags. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
And you're going to hear it from me because I'm a grower. And those bags, okay, they're made of like a cotton fiber. They're not plastic. It's not fiberglass. Okay, so I'm going to fill them up with dirt and I'm going to put plants in it. Okay, because the wind's going to shoot right through those little holes that are in it, the air.
Mm-hmm.
And watch the size of the tomato plants I get this year from those bags. As soon as I seen the bags, I looked and went, shit, for 35 cents, it's cheaper than buying a plastic container to grow in.
Well, I'm glad you find any use. Let's reuse them.
I found a great use for them, and I can't wait here. The weather's just breaking here down in southern Ontario.
Yep.
Right. Well, you've seen it today. You're not far
Gorgeous.
from me, and it's
Gorgeous
beautiful
day
out, right?
today.
Yeah. You know, if people are ready to start planting, don't plant yet. Okay. I just know you just don't do it till after May 2-4. You don't plant nothing in the garden till after May 2-4.
Yeah.
Right. Your flowers, your perennials, yeah, you can plant them now, but when it comes to vegetables, don't do it. You'll be replanting after June. You'll be late starting.
Listen, Leo, I don't like to cut it short, but I have to go. So the clock is ticking. So
Where are you going?
I've got an obligation upstairs called
there you go.
husband duty.
The wife is calling, baby.
Yes, she is.
The wife is calling. There you go.
So,
everybody, I'm glad you had a great, happy Easter. Mine was great. Thanks, Rick. You're the best.
Thank you, Leo. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. Fantastic show. Thank you especially to Steve for putting up with me and being patient. And I'm glad we got to a better place on all of that. I will be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.